Hello and welcome to Six Part. Today I'm gonna continue the story What If Deku Was Born with All for One Part 1. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
The doctor told me I didn't have a quirk just because people who are born with quirks do not have an additional joint in their small toe. I made some research about this and I found that there was a close chromosomal linkage between the extra toe joint and a lack of a quirk. And also there is the the Q. Quirk factor? To Sensei's aid. Why yes, the term, quirk factor, refers to the collective traits that compose a quirk. This includes the primary quirk power as well as all the biological mechanisms that allow said primary power to function properly. Have you learned those definition by heart? Yes. Izuku acknowledged. I returned to the doctor several times, both before and after Izuku halted, recalling how tumultuous his initial encounter had been, after I found out I had all for one. Quirk factor doesn't necessarily design DNA or mutations. In fact, every person has a different kind of quirk factor in their body. Most of the time it's some kind of liquid like blood, for example. Said all for one, who understood where Izuku was headed. The doctor told me that I had no quirk. In a way I guess he wasn't completely wrong. How does it work? I mean, what kind of quirk doesn't need quirk factor to work? Excellent question. Sadly I can't give you an answer. Our quirk, is a miracle. When you steal a quirk you take the quirk factor of the user in order to use it. In fact, that's how we can take as many quirks as we want. I already explained that almost no one can have more than one quirk at the same time. That's because their body can't adapt. The DNAs do not merge correctly or it's too complex. I'm not sure about this part. But all for one, it makes everything possible. We have no limit. Our body becomes some kind of universal key for DNA. So if I wanted, I could take every quirk on the planet and use them without risking to get hurt? Yes, I know you will not like this example, but take the other trash, your old friend Katsuki. His quirk should burn him, right? Well, it doesn't, because his body is adapted to his quirk. The same would happen if you used all for one to take his quirk. However, if you were to transfer this quirk to someone who doesn't possess all for one, well, I guess you can deduce the suit by yourself. I think so. Thank you, Sensei. Now, good morning, Nezu. The recovery girl was taken aback to discover that Nezu's desk was surrounded by walls of papers. What happened here? She exclaimed. Oh, hello, Chio. Don't worry about the mess, I'm just trying to figure out a thing for two about the security breach. Without knocking down any of the stacks, the heroine made it to the desk and asked, the USJ? But I thought that we had the full scenario. Do we? I just have a crazy theory, but that would be too long to explain. Is anything wrong? Asking for an augmentation? As if you would give any ha ha ha. No, in fact I'm here to ask for a new computer. The actual one is losing his mind faster than I do. Without glancing, the principal said, and picked up a piece of paper behind him. Yes, it's here, we bought it 3 months ago. Well, I can't work with an equip that sends my students on the moon when I'm trying to get them home. Yes, maybe that wasn't the right way to explain the situation. I get it, but can I at least have the full version before we invest into a complete informatics setup for the infirmary? The principal laughed when he said, you see, Izuku Midoriya was injured at the USJ, just a broken rib. Something funny? Just a broken rib? Oh please. I know it hurts a lot, but it could have been worse. I can't make bones grow back, but I can stick them back. May I continue now? Yes, sorry. Well, I wanted to take a sample of his blood, to prevent any infection, and when I finally had the results I saw the highest concentration of quirk factor I had ever seen. Like? Recovery girl asked, pulling a piece of paper out of her pocket and handing it to Nezu. Yes, we are going to invest right now, but at this point, I'm not even sure he would still be alive, ha ha ha. Recovery girl walked out of the principal's office, saying, thank you, for once you take something seriously. I should go check Shota now, he is too stubborn to sleep when he should. Well, looks like I'm gonna be able to reduce my field of research. I came here as fast as I could, All Might said as he transformed into a skeleton and entered a white room that was only accessible by authorized personnel. The investigator gestured to All Might's stomach, but the peace symbol waved his hand away, dismissing him. Are you all right? I heard that he crushed. I'm fine, but All Might sensed that something wasn't quite right. He couldn't pinpoint what he witnessed while battling this creature. But, nothing. What about our friend here? All Might was standing by Naomasa in front of a large window, behind the firmly restrained Nomu who attacked the USJ, and he was looking about a little. He doesn't speak, doesn't react to pain. Well, as long as we aren't directly interacting with its head, but it's not completely liveless. In fact, when we arrived here it seemed very cooperative. Cooperative? Noamasa delivered All Might a number of files and said, let's just say he didn't give us any kind of trouble. Our forensic team made some analysis. He doesn't look like that anymore. The Nomu was not meant to be a giant like All Might, but rather a little bandit. At least 6 distinct DNA samples were discovered inside the creature after All Might performed a check the others. With those files we managed to identify which quirk this creature had. All Might noted. 3 are missing, or at least we can't find any trace of their quirk factor, it's just gone. Strength enhancer, speed and reflexes. I don't think the one who created this thing simply decided to not use this quirks. Something is wrong here. I have checked again what the students told me. So far only Izuku Midoriya seemed to be aware that this creature wasn't human and had more than one quirk, though I'm not suggesting anything. Some of them, especially Tenya Ida, told me that he was making amazing analysis in some sort of notebooks collection. He does? I wasn't aware. The investigator said icily, he hates you. All Might gave him a perplexed look in return, saying, Eraser told me what happened during his first day with you as his teacher. It didn't go well. I just wanted to protect him. I know. You didn't have any bad intentions, but you didn't have any consideration either. This kid hates to be looked down on, and you managed to make it clear that you thought he would get gravely injured. He didn't tell me how it ended. Did he win? Win? He aced the exercise without a single scratch? See, you have the bad tendency to misjudge people. Izuku is strong. Everyone in his class told me that he was the one who helped Tenya to warn the other heroes when both Aizawa and 13 couldn't help them. You know, he might be a good successor. You think? Komon Toshi, you were in the same situation than him. He must have been through a lot to get here. Izuku had spent about an hour sitting on a chair watching All for One toss everything he saw against the wall, and Sensei was in a foul mood. All for One appeared so composed every time he threw something, but he was also exerting a lot of strength in each action, so Izuku wasn't sure if it was hilarious or not. I just can't quite figure out why you want me to take the quirks you earned. Because it's wrong. Those quirks were forced into this. Nomu. All for One was finished. Why yes, did I say its name before? Izuku realized that he had forgotten to mention the creature or its name. You did, when you came here. You don't remember? Izuku had never sensed Sensei's hesitation before. No, let's just I meant to say that these people didn't accept to become this. Who would? If only Izuku understood how many people are clamoring for greater authority outside, Daruma would have taken action instead of All for One. Think even more. What if those quirks used to belong to criminals? If you gave back their quirks, they would only use them once again to hurt other people. It's not what I mean, it's wrong. I can't just take someone else's quirk and use it because I would be better than them. With anger in his voice, Sensei said, they are not even here to reclaim it, it's such a waste. He then turned and headed for his chair. Please, I don't want to argue with you again about what I'm doing with All for One. I'm not like you and I will never be. I just can't. You helped me so much, but you did something wrong. Izuku was about to speak when All for One appeared above him, gazing at him. Be careful about your next words. You tried to make me perfect when I can't be so. Fine, if I really need those quirks I will take them, but I'm not ready yet. Sensei extended his hand and said, you know what to do. All for One remained motionless for a moment before he relaxed and sighed, saying, I can't say important, not satisfied at all. You are improving. Izuku took hold of Sensei's hand and concentrated. The following day. By the end of the week, Izuku had not heard from Recovery Girl, and it appeared that Aizawa was still healing from his wounds. According to the mail the students received, he was fine, and would be able to resume work on Monday. Izuku turned down Ochako's invitation to her apartment with Tenya, Momo, and Tsuyu since he appeared really exhausted and his friends would inquire about it. Additionally, there was a detail that bothered him. The Nomu tore All Might's shirt around his abdomen back at the USJ, and although it didn't appear to be a wound or scar, Izuku had never seen anything like the Nomu's flesh while he was healing. A jumbled bundle of flesh, but perhaps it's not what it seems at the end. Perhaps it's a side consequence of All Might's quirk. Perhaps that's why he doesn't tell anyone. Izuku had originally intended to visit Dagoba Municipal Beach Park to delve into his notebooks undisturbed. He could have gone to the park just adjacent to his flat, but he ultimately chose not to visit this area at all because it wasn't very busy. Sensei gave Izuku permission to remain at his lair after school ended around a year after they first met. Even if Katsuki and his henchmen weren't pursuing him, he would always run as quickly as he could. Initially, All for One would either sleep or stare at numerous blank screens without any obvious purpose, until one day he became interested and asked Izuku what he was doing with his notebooks. A year ago. Analysis? You are probably the first person I ever see doing such a thing about quirks, but tell me, what exactly are you looking for? WL. Everything, what it can do, how it works, its limits, its weaknesses, what it could do. I'm just doing this as a hobby. Sensei turned around the table where Izuku was sitting and stood in front of him, saying, "You think you can do better than them?" Izuku wasn't looking at Sensei, but he could tell that the man was grinning. Just a hobby? My intuition tells me that this might not be the whole truth. Such a fascination for quirk. Izuku had been in this predicament before. Sensei would sit in front of him and say something that Izuku would attempt to refute but was unable to do so. Why? He understood deep down that if he was doing this, it was only because he would be far stronger than everyone else if he possessed those peculiarities that made everyone else so unique and normal. No, in fact, you know you can be better than them. Izuku tightened his grasp on the pen. But you are too kind to do what you want, too restricted, so instead you keep writing your analysis like if you were taking some drug. I admire that. You are very resistant to temptation. Honestly, I'm not. Now, Izuku refused to read the propaganda books that All for One brought the following week, but if you ignore the fact that Sensei was always adding remarks about how brilliant Edward Bernays was for somehow coming up with what would eventually become the fundamentals of the heroic propaganda, it was actually quite fascinating. How can you exert authority over someone without resorting to force or violence? What exactly is different in this case? The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government which is the true ruling power of our country, Izuku said while walking. Even worse, it had been demonstrated for several centuries that 50 amateur chess players were on par with or almost as intelligent as a world champion. The villains at the USJ clearly lacked this capacity for collective thought. That humans are humans, and they can't think together to achieve great things unless there is something stronger above them, are statements that Sensei would make. As though Izuku had anticipated something different from the greatest puppeteer in history. Somewhere else. A crash. Kurogiri gave up trying to soothe Tamura after they returned from the USJ and discovered that half of the furnishings had been damaged. Sensei did nothing but contact Tamura and tell him to keep trying because he did a terrific job. And up until this point, the league leader continued to move like a zombie before pausing, staring into space, grabbing the closest chair and hurling it against a wall, and then muttering something about a stupid brat. Naturally, this had to be Sensei's second apprentice. The bartender, trying to hide his rage, asked, "Do you know how much all of this costs?" "Oh, shut up, you can just steal it back." True, but now that the heroes would recognize him, Kurogiri was aware that there would be no way out if Tamura attacked the USJ. The hellish engine of All for One was already in operation. "Could you at least share what's on your mind?" Kurogiri, the target of the next throw, narrowly dodged under the counter, saying, "He did something to the Nomu. He ruined everything. Even the doctor said that it was impossible to mess with a Nomu like that. He cheated. This kid. That's the problem." Betrayed. Tamura first used this as an excuse for every loss until becoming more rational and attempting to improve his shortcomings. He would also continue to behave like a child, which seemed odd given that All for One had decided to give him his empire. Kurogiri barely comprehended what his lord saw in Tamura. Somewhere else. Izuku found himself at the beach, which was actually a trash dump. Nobody came here unless they need to drop off an outdated microwave or refrigerator. Here, he penned his final 3 notebooks, this time on villains rather than heroes. That was 4 years ago. Happy Halloween, dear Izuku. If you are celebrating this, of course. Honestly, I thought you might hate this day. I do not, well, not all aspects. Do you know about the origins of Halloween? You are going to tell me, I guess. I would die if I let you drowning in the darkness of ignorance. I'll keep it simple. It's boring, to be honest. It's some kind of Celtic tradition to mark the end of the harvesting season and the beginning of winter. During this short period of time, Spirit would come out and eat the harvests. That's why people are leaving candies outside. So the people disguised as monsters are really just here for the joke, ha ha ha. Well, that's your problem if you don't believe in ghosts, Sensei said, grinning broadly. Izuku became suspicious. What if I do not believe in ghosts? It's not real, right? He wasn't afraid because the strongest person in the world, or at least one who was close to All Might's level, was standing directly in front of him. Izuku was being played with, and he detested it. I never lie, Izuku. I only suggest things, but yes, you can say that in a way ghosts may exist. Oh okay fine. Ghosts exist. Izuku was unable to determine whether Sensei was pleased that he had scared him or whether he was serious about ghosts. You know, this reminds me of some comics I used to read. You would be impressed by how scary some were. In fact, as it's Halloween, let me tell you about one of my favorite villains, not because they are strong or smart, but because they are the kind of villain that doesn't exist nowadays, Izuku said. Do you know about a hero called the Flash? All for One asked Izuku to take a seat closer to him. Why yeah, is he the one with super speed? Izuku examined his phone. It was only 6 p.m., but he shouldn't tell everyone at once. Yes, he is. I do not really like the main story. In the end it was simply too confused and. Let's just get back to our main subject. Tonight I'm going to talk about Zoom, he said. Zoom? As is Professor Zoom? The Reverse Floridas? No, not at all. This one is a pathetic joke of a villain. Yes, he can hurt the hero, but he can't kill him or simply kill all his friends. He is just too limited to be dangerous. The Zoom I'm talking about is a true monster. Izuku was surprised to see that Sensei was practically a comics enthusiast. In fact, he enjoyed seeing All for One in this way. Zoom was born on another Earth, because yes, in this universe the multiverse exists and there is even a cubic planet. His name was Hunter Zolomon. When he was young his father killed his mother in front of him because. I can't remember why, sorry. Izuku felt ashamed. Sensei was obviously not doing his job well if he was attempting to convey a frightening tale. This incident brought him on a path of crime and horror. He was arrested multiple times and finally Hunter was sent to an asylum. One night during a sessions of treatment he was caught in the explosion of a particle accelerator. That's how he received his superpowers. He became the faster man in his universe. Just like the Flash, at first yes, but he wanted more. He found a way to increase his speed with a drug, but soon he discovered that it was killing him, so he found another way. He could steal the speed of other people like him. People with access to the Speed Force. He became unstoppable. No, not really, right? The Flash must have found a way to stop him. Zoom was his worst enemy. He took the identity of another speedster to infiltrate the team of the Flash and fight him at the same time. But how? The Flash would have noticed that when he was fighting Zoom, Hunter wasn't here, right? That's where it gets interesting. The Flash could never stop him because Zoom was the only speedster able to be in two places at the same time. He called that a time remnant. Speedsters can time travel, you see. The idea of this trick is to. Izuku received a broad smile and a warm nod in response to his question. Time travel right before you do so, right? The Flash was desperate to find a way to defeat him. He tried everything, even to trap him once he had discovered Zoom's identity, but it didn't work. Zoom was too strong. He had something dark inside of him. Sensei murmured. But in the end I guess that the comic was getting unpopular as the Flash never won against him. So Zoom started losing. The Flash, suddenly, became stronger than him. He even managed to beat him with his time remnant and steal his own trick to defeat him. So, Zoom was arrested. Sensei recalled the comic in his mind about Zoom's final moments. His brother was sad for the Flash, because Zoom had killed many people he loved, but he never thought about Zoom's fate and story. No. He became even stronger. During their last fight he was transformed. As a punishment for stealing the speed of other speedsters, the Speed Force transformed him. A slave. A hunter who could erase speedsters who messed with time from our reality. That was a great story. Can you tell me about another one? Izuku halted, but Sensei was still drawn to him. Yes, of course. Let's see. How about Cicada? Because of their fascinating characters and how they differed from the heroes, Izuku was moved and came to like the most despised members of society. Every Halloween night, Sensei would tell him tales about real or imagined villains. Occasionally, heroes would be mentioned, but they would almost always have a bad ending. Izuku had a notebook open on his legs and was perched atop an old truck wheel. He intended to write about the USJ's villains. Kurogiri as well as Tamura. He briefly considered the Nomu as well, but it would be pointless because this creature lacked individuality and had too many eccentricities to be predictable. He penned the missed villain's name. Then nothing happened. Izuku didn't know how to begin with him. As he turned to the next page, it happened once more. Every time he tried to type a word, he felt nauseous and imagined himself helpless in front of the Nomu. Why was he so afraid when all was finished and the USJ was on his side? His phone rang and his mother had just sent him a message. Noticed, sorry. I know that you are working on your notebooks right now, but I really felt like you need to think about something else, considering what just happened. In fact, I too need some distraction. I'm about to collapse somewhere. Anyway, it's been a while. I'm asking you to invite your friend who helped you and now might be the perfect time to do so. Izuku didn't continue reading. Izuku put his phone back in his bag and considered the things he might have forgotten to mention to his mother when she invited All for One to dinner. For example, he is likely much older than the 3 generations of his family that have reunited, and All for One may or may not be a megalomaniac control freak and a genius in politics and propaganda. Izuku wasn't sure if he should tell her everything at this point or just state that his friend politely denied. How could he possibly get in touch with Sensei? It was getting close to night, and his hideout was too far away to. Izuku arrived in Sensei's lair after feeling a familiar liquid encompass him and his possessions. "I'm ready," was the first thing All for One said when Izuku showed up. Izuku exclaimed, "How?" with frustration rather than anger. "You claim to be blind. And how do you have access to my phone messages in the first place?" "Even though I am blind, I can still hear." Sensei reached for a remote control beside his chair and aimed it at the typically blank displays. He touched a few keys, and all of the TVs simultaneously made noises. Since each one appeared to be showing a different station, the noise wasn't very bearable. "When I'm not too tired, I use this to stay informed. Every information is stocked in my head despite the chaos thanks to a quirk," Izuku All for One said after realizing that this was upsetting and turning off all the screens. "That doesn't explain how." Izuku was glaring at Saint Sensei, saying, "You can't blame me for trying to protect you. I may have modified your phone a bit, and spied on your conversations." "From what? If you ever find yourself in trouble, I will know it, and I might be able to help you. Each time I asked if you had a phone, you told me you didn't." "Because I can't. What if someone finds out about our relationship? That could lead them directly to me, and trust me, you would be in danger as much as me. Anyway, how'd I look?" Nothing changed because he was still sporting his black mask and his old attire. "I guess you might give her a heart attack. You never told her, did you? That's why she keeps referring to me as your friend. Very well, that will be the perfect time to do so. Why are you torturing me like this?" All for One understood that Izuku didn't like this concept at all. In fact, he wouldn't have accepted to see his mother if it weren't for Izuku. "Torturing? Please. This might be the most enjoyable night I will ever have this month." It was 5 years ago. All for One had a fairly rough experience with Daruma. The doctor kept putting off the Nomu's manufacture, constantly requesting additional money or quirks to conduct tests. This man never paused to tell All for One that his injuries might be irreversible. Talk about moral harassment. Before the doctor left, he consented to his therapy. The Lord of Crime, however, never took it as he knew it wouldn't work unless he had a really bad headache. Izuku arrived late, really late, and the door opened. He thought the child wouldn't arrive this afternoon 10 minutes ago, but he was here in the end. But something wasn't right. Izuku didn't even say, "Good afternoon," or anything like, and the door opened more slowly than it had on previous days. All for One smelled something odd of blood, dust, and burnza as he fixed his gaze on the child. In the process of getting out of his chair, he tore out some of the cords that were attached to his mask. "Izuku." By the time he got to him, the child was already on his knees. Sensei grabbed him by the head, but he quickly withdrew his hand when he noticed blood dripping from his fingers. He glanced back at the desk behind his chair, realizing that he had no peculiarity that could be of assistance to Izuku at this moment. The doctor's medications weren't designed for anyone, but Izuku wasn't for anyone. He was strong enough and All for One. With the limitless strength augmentation quirk he possessed, All for One could take those tablets without any problems. They were designed to strengthen the immune system and speed up the healing process by unlocking its limits. He installed Izuku after carrying him to his chair. However, Izuku had never encountered such a situation and had little choice except to either live or perish as a result of the tablet's effects. Sensei opened his mouth, put 2 pills in it, and then pushed a glass of water down Izuku's throat. If he was right, even if he was asleep, his body would have tried to swallow or spit it out on its own, so he had to keep Izuku's mouth shut until the child swallowed the pills. During the first few minutes, nothing happened as All for One attempted to use whatever he had to conceal Izuku's wounds. Izuku coughed hard without notice, and his body shook as if there had been an earthquake. Sensei was unable to get to him for what seemed like hours, and his skin turned white as snow, making it impossible to tell if Izuku was still alive. Izuku's injuries had vanished by the time he appeared to settle down, indicating that whatever was in those pills was extremely potent. However, All for One now had another issue. At about 8 o'clock in the evening, he saw a zombie-like comatose child resting on his own chair. After weighing his alternatives, he took the most sensible course of action. Well, here we are. Izuku was genuinely shocked and relieved that no one saw him strolling with Sensei, and he wasn't embarrassed to show All for One that he loved her in a tiny apartment. He seldom believed in the person who could conceal his presence from the majority of those around him, even if he was aware of some of Sensei's peculiarities. When Izuku noticed Sensei gazing at the door, he asked, "Is something wrong?" I apologize. I was preoccupied with something else for a moment. Sensei has already visited this location, in fact, he has a vivid memory of it. With a trembling hand, Izuku grasped the door handle and pushed it open. Almost instantly, Sensei and he both smelled the sweet, delicious smell of pork, and they both thought of a beautiful meal of katsudon. "I'm home," Izuku declared. "Oh, I got your message, have they arrived?" From the kitchen, he enthusiastically asked his mother. "Yeah." Izuku was pleading for a miracle, just this once, and they agreed. Izuku could barely bring himself to answer with happiness in his voice, but he had to do so, with a big and as natural as possible smile, or else his mother might actually call the cops or heroes and or have a heart attack. Izuku remained motionless as Sensei walked in and shut the door behind him. They heard a chair being moved, and Izuku's mother emerged from the hallway. "Well hell." Inko paused as she saw the towering man in the hallway, dressed in what appeared to be a tuxedo and a metal mask shaped like a skull, waving at her. "Sorry, I didn't expect you to come here dresses like that," she said, apologizing after a moment of staring at her visitor. Izuku genuinely thought he was dreaming, and his mother didn't overreact. In fact, she was quite normal. Did she think Sensei was dressed up? The man approached Inko and held out his hand, asking Izuku's mother to shake it. "It's nothing, I should be the one to apologize for coming here in such a state, but nevertheless I must inform you that I do not have much choice for my defense." All for One was momentarily taken aback when Inko grasped it with both of her hands since he thought her hands were incredibly warm and inviting. She motioned for All for One to accompany her toward what appeared to be the living area, saying, "It's nothing really, I understand and do not blame you, please make yourself at home." What may happen if Izuku left Sensei and his mother together for 5 minutes? Izuku was about to ask his mother whether she was feeling good when his phone rang and it was Ochako. He had to answer. "I apologize, I should have responded. I'll be right back," before rushing inside his bedroom, he apologized. All for One laughed briefly. He too was surprised by Inko's response and found it amusing to see Izuku's bewilderment. "I've been considering this for years now," Inko said, reaching into a drawer and removing a piece of paper. "Remember?" Even though he couldn't see the paper's outward appearance, Inko knew what it was when he gave it to All for One. It was 5 years ago. It was nearly dark outside, and Inko was going to contact the police when someone knocked on the door. At this point, she was rather concerned because Izuku was not returning her calls and always returned home by 7 p.m. "Izuku?" At the same moment, she ran toward the door and called. However, Inko got no response, and when she opened the door, she saw that nobody was there save for her kid, who was lying in front of the door and was very pale. When Inko screamed as loudly as she could, she was prepared to call for an ambulance and, if necessary, to take her kid across the entire city to the nearest hospital. Inko took her kid by the shoulders and carried him onto the living room couch, where he was still breathing though it seemed like he was just sleeping. Something slipped out of Izuku's pocket as she was making her way to the phone. Was it a letter? She began reading, but there was no envelope. "Hello, The words, AUSN's friend D. He came to MJ house and D he looked D re and LLYSJCK. Place Tahe care o, F him. Were written so poorly that Inko paused for a time and skipped much of the parts she couldn't understand. I will be honest with you, this was pretty perplexing at first, but after a few days Izuku was feeling better and I asked him about this and who was this friend of him. Naturally, I noticed that he had been returning home approximately 30 minutes later than usual for a few months. Inko offered All for One a chair at the same time, and he accepted it with a simple nod, saying, "He never said much about you. He only said that he happened to meet you and that I shouldn't be worried, he was fine. He didn't lie, he actually happened to meet me when he unintentionally ran into my house." All for One glanced at the letter once again and said, "I'm sorry, I don't even remember what I wrote. I don't regret this at all, he is such a good kid. You were unable to see, consequently, it was so. I see, Buddha, just forms. I wrote this before I brought Izuku back here. To be honest, I didn't mean to frighten you, so I left as soon as I got him home." There was a brief pause before I asked, "Did he discuss our peculiarity?" "Well, Izuku didn't specify anything concerning your quirk, but it sounded pretty obvious." Inko thought for a bit. "I feel like I've lost touch with Izuku since he revealed his quirk, and I'm unable to provide him with the love and support he needs. I have a lot of questions for you." Using his peculiarity, All for One examined the space and found that it was just large enough for one person to live in, with only 2 bedrooms. Where Izuku never discusses his father. All for One attempted to conceal his inquiry, stating that it doesn't seem right to ask such a direct question when he may infer the answer. Even Inko didn't seem to have a clear response to the question. Hisashi is working. Gone. He provides us with monthly financial support. However, he never answers the phone or calls. I shouldn't have asked this question. And no, it's all right. Actually, it demonstrates your concern for my Izuku, and I'm more happier to know that he's at last found a buddy who values him. I assume you were also aware of Katsuki Bakugo? I offered my assistance to Izuku several times, but he denied it, claiming that Katsuki wasn't a bad person, so I did nothing. However, on the day you received my letter, it was evident that the aforementioned, not-so-bad person, was the one who brought your son to the gates of death. Asked All for One. Inko implied this fact clearly, perhaps on purpose? I knew about this too, Inko said, staring blankly at All for One. Izuku didn't have any injuries, and I'm not sure if you were able to heal him in any way, but his clothes clearly smelled like ashes. To be honest, I've encountered this smell far too often. You never make an effort to speak with his parents, or the instructors of Izuku? As far as I can tell, they never did anything to rectify Katsuki's behavior. What would they take home? What would they gain by assisting a weak and useless oddball child? Saying those words upset Inko. It never stopped, and I knew it wouldn't. Honestly, I was scared because one day I knew that Izuku might have enough of this and he would. Rejoice, for him. He is happy now, and tomorrow he will be. Do not waste this evening, All for One said, placing a hand on Inko's shoulder and pointing to Izuku's bedroom. With her eyes closed, Inko said, yes, you were right, and I still have a lot of questions for you, smiling instead of crying. When Izuku returned a little while later, Ochako asked him if he felt comfortable spending the weekend with the class in order to recover from the events at the USJ. It was awkward to watch his mother adjust so rapidly to the presence of the most dreaded criminal in the world. Virtually these days, but he accepted, of course, and heard his mother and All for One laughing from the living room as he spoke to her. Izuku didn't want to leave his room just yet. He wanted to spend some time with his mother and All for One alone. He couldn't recall the last time they had a visitor. Izuku actually thought All for One was nearly a. Izuku grinned as he turned to face his desk, where he had dropped Sensei's gloves. What could go wrong now? All right. You came to a decision? Shall I make a call? Nedzu, no. Mirio isn't the person I selected, thus that won't be required. The principal was astonished and said, so, then who? I was reminded by a friend that I wasn't. All-May took a picture out of his pocket and presented it to Nedzu, saying, here, the next user of One for All. No, he shouldn't necessarily search for a strong successor. Midoriya Izuku, was all the principal said while he gazed at the photo. I noticed recently that my phone was displaying articles when I'm using internet and, well, most of them, even all of them, tells about either murders or heroes. This feels really weird. I cannot even find anything without crossing the decapitation of Scandinavian girls, the fact that an old man was found dead in his bathroom 15 years after he actually died. I should be happy now that I'm blind then, Sensei humorously said. I tried to control to media once, you know. Note this somewhere, do not. No one can expect the government. Because there are too many different journals? If you try to emerge with one, the others just flood it instantly? One person rose up and clapped a few times, saying, my dear student, you no longer need me. Now another lesson. You can't get the truth unless you push it to its limits. Which would be death, of course. Izuku's mind briefly stopped functioning until he saw Sensei holding a journalist by the throat above the ground while something ominous, like black tentacles or something, was behind him. Do I really have to go so far? I mean? Izuku responded with a chuckle. No, of course you don't have to, it's just a suggestion. And yes, that might also be quickest way. In fact, you should always try to use words as your first choice of weapon. Words? You do not look like a great orator, no offense. The statement, I could make this society collapse with one word, no in fact 6 words, was displayed on an empty screen while All for One rested his chin on his hand. After a period of waiting and writing in his notebook, Izuku noticed that Sensei had stopped talking. He could almost hear his breath. Was he sleeping? The teenager went up to All for One. Sensei. No answer. Just a murmur. Don't you think he looks tired? And then nothing. Izuku was unable to comprehend that All for One was so vulnerable in his true form, and the thought of the man who had tortured him in this way both frightened and hurt him. Today. Before joining the other members of 1A for their day off, Ochako offered Izuku some tea at her house as he was en route to her residence. The problem is that Izuku was aware that it was a private invitation and that it appeared to be quite similar. He didn't tell his mother where he was going because of this. Additionally, he was rethinking his decision after purchasing a warm green scarf for Ochako. He chose green, which was too visible based merely on his hair. Normally, he would have chosen brown, but it didn't mix well with Ochako. Purple was too dark, yellow and purple were just repulsive, and the only scarf colors left were red. Perhaps a plain pastry would have worked well. When Izuku noticed where he was walking, he began to murmur about his problems out loud, asking, "How do I even manage to meet such a nice person when He recalled this bridge. A year ago. It was most likely the worst day of the month, the year, or perhaps his whole life. His left arm ached, and he didn't think Katsuki could inflict such severe pain on him, let alone that the teachers wouldn't respond. But that's how it started. Katsuki decided to just hurt Izuku whenever he had the chance since he was weary of missing him every day after school finished. Izuku simply left school without anyone complaining, even though his mother would have phoned him hundreds of times if she had. It felt like someone was sticking a nail in Izuku's shoulder, but it wasn't burned. Instead, something else was broken. He had been walking for 10 minutes or so, and every time he took a step, his arm would move, even a little. Izuku came to a stop since there was nowhere to rest and he didn't want to wind up in a hospital. Since the former villain was arguing with decades of experience to support All for One, Izuku could only agree, so he stopped beneath a little bridge that joined two streets and dumped his school bag on the ground. According to Sensei, that was where he had the most opportunities to get me into trouble. All he wanted was 1 minute pain-free and without movement. Well, fresh meat, you already look dead to me. Izuku turned to face the enormous mass of stuff in front of him. Goo? Yes, he was taken aback, but was he not afraid? The Goo said, "Don't worry, I'll make a fine use of your corpse," as it got closer to the teenager. Izuku didn't intend to move, so he didn't. Without hesitating, he replied, Just leave me alone." "Are you brain dead? Do you know who you are talking to?" the curious Goo asked as it slowed down. "I asked you to leave me alone," gave him a peculiar boost of confidence, which he both liked and feared. He could not take his eyes off the scoundrel, and it was enough to frighten him. Another voice said, "Why you?" Someone was sprinting at them from the other end of the tunnel, and the Goo was even more terrified. And not now. Izuku saw the Goo hide somewhere behind him, but it was so transparent and foolish that anyone woulda. "Hey kid," said someone else, and Izuku instantly recognized the pro-hero Kamui Wood. "Did you happen to see a villain who looks like a big mass of green liquid?" Izuku asked. Izuku didn't hesitate to respond, even though he found it difficult to digest the information. "Yes, he went this way, excellent. If you see this individual again, do not approach it, this villain is a murderer. Anyway, have a nice day." The pro-hero nodded as he turned to face the other end of the tunnel. It was repulsive. He failed to see the villain or Izuku's injuries, and worse, the hero was using it to refer to the evil as a real person, a live being. The villain reappeared and exclaimed, "Why? Why did you do that?" It's a reasonable question, since nobody would voluntarily assist someone who attempted to kill them just a few seconds before. He was disgusting. Was the only way Izuku could think of to explain his impression of a professional hero he had just met. However, a little moment was plenty to convey how awful his work was. Did you really kill people?" The antagonist changed. "Did it now have a mouth and an eye?" "Yes, I did. Do you think it's easy to live when you have this kind of quirk? People do not even see you as a human anymore. They immediately think I'm a monster. So when I kill someone, I can take their body and just for a few days I can be normal again." Izuku was even more interested in finding out about the villain. "Since when?" "When I reached my 11th birthday, all the bones in my body had disappeared. My parents left. I couldn't hold a human apparent anymore, it was just too exhausting to focus, and day people came to my house. I do not know what they wanted exactly. Money. It didn't matter. When they saw me they immediately contacted the heroes, so I ran away." "And how did you find out you could steal bodies?" "I didn't, I knew it. I genuinely knew it. At first I tried on corpses, small animals you see. But it was never as good and lasting as a human one." Although their tales appeared to be so different, Izuku understood how it felt because they had many things in common, perhaps. You told me your story, even if we do not know each other's at all, can you keep a secret?" The villains, "Go on kid," now sounded less assured and more suspicious. Izuku glanced at the villain to see if there was a reaction, but there was none. "I know it's really different from your story, but Stealing quirks would simply be wrong and the slime villain was desperate, and anyone could see this. Izuku thought, take mine. The villain was very close to Izuku, almost too close. Please take away this curse and give it to someone else, someone who might have the chance to live a normal life even with such a quirk. It would be perfect for a hero, but for me it's too late, please take it. However, it would be incorrect once more. What would happen if Izuku adopted the villain's quirk? The villain would most certainly wind up as a dead body because he had no bones, no organs, only an eye, and what appeared to be a mouth. Then, like the villain, Izuku would be saddled with a quirk that would gradually transform him into a slime. He may give it to someone without any peculiarities. Yes, that could be beneficial, but what if the same thing occurs? He could ask Sensei to read about this oddity, but Izuku wasn't sure how Sensei would actually accomplish it, even though it would result in the same situation. Izuku felt something caressing his injured arm, but he didn't detect anything because the villain had trapped his arm in his body while they were speaking. I can't. I'm sorry, I can't help you, it just wouldn't work. I swear after what you told me I would like to do something, but I can't. There was a crack, and Izuku felt a flash of excruciating pain that nearly caused him to scream. Don't move. And then nothing. Did he feel okay? Here, it's done. How did you even manage to have a shorn shoulder? Someone at my school isn't really a nice person, Izuku said, moving his arm. The villain stepped back from Izuku and said, thank you, I really wish I could. Don't, it's fine, for once I actually met someone who sees me as something else than a monster. I should be the one to apologize. By now I would probably be using your body if you weren't so. Wait, you said you could take quirks, right? The antagonist suddenly appeared frightened. Are you related to him? I'm sorry. I didn't know you were related to him. I won't ever bother you again. Izuku attempted to ask the villain for an explanation, but he simply went. In reality, Izuku knew why the villain was afraid, therefore no explanation was required. It's everything for one. Although his sensei was retired, Izuku could understand why criminals would be afraid of or reverent of him. Was he truly that powerful in his heyday? What a waste that Izuku was able to speak openly with someone except Sensei or his mother for once. Now, since Sensei had his own morals, it must have been difficult for him to assist others with all for one. Izuku pondered where the villain might be at this moment. I hope he found a way to live a normal life and stop taking bodies. Or at the very least lead a respectable life as an average person. After checking his phone for 10 minutes or so, Izuku realized that he needed to sprint immediately in order to be on time. Somewhere else. He forgot how the little things in life could make him so happy, and it had been the nicest evening in years. All for one wanted it could happen at least once a week. But soon enough, reality caught up with him. Kurogiri? I do not recall that Daruma had to bring me something, he said with irritation, hoping the bartender would hurry away. No, sensei, I'm taking a risk here. I want to know if Izuku Midoriya is a threat to Tamura. What an odd question. All for one had his reservations, but it appears that Kurogiri had feelings for Tamura, which is a positive thing. Not yet. You asked me to serve Tamura and help him, but at the same time you asked me to betray him and protect this kid. You are sending me mixed signals and I do not want to get caught between two fires. But you will. What makes you think you have the choice? I never said I won't, but I need to know how Izuku acts in your forest scheme. All for one got out of his chair and yelled at Kurogiri, he is a backup, that's all you need to know. Tamura said he was about to recruit better paws, how is it going for him? Fine for now, Jiren is good at his job, but I have my doubts about who he brings to us. Have you heard of Muscular? I did. He can contact this beast? I'm impressed, even I wouldn't try to reason with him, he would already be dead, dispose of them if it's necessary, if they fail to follow his directions make sure that it doesn't happen again. The bartender said, as you wish sensei, and departed. After a few interval of waiting, he sat back in his chair since he needed to take his medication immediately and thousands of voices were yelling at him. It was 5 years ago. Sir, he is coming. We have lost communication with the West hideout. Everyone was fleeing or getting ready to battle All Might, which they were unable to destroy. All for one was unable to comprehend. How could All Might have known his precise location? He verified that there were no trackers, traitors, or anyone else who would be dead at this point. It must have been a peculiarity. Did he ever make a mistake? After hearing a huge smash in the adjacent room, he arrived at his new location, which was miles away, in just 1 minute. Nanashimura has never used one for all with this much strength before. If he didn't finish tonight, All for one might lose this time. All for one, come out you coward, it's time for you to pay. This time, he was ready, had no way out, and had no intention of doing so. However, after seeing All Might's strength, he began to doubt himself. As All for One looked around, he realized that he was by himself and that everyone in the old warehouse had vanished. "I'm here. How about you let me kill you this time? Trust me, it would be way faster for both of us. By yourself?" All might have sent it hurtling at All for One, who didn't even have to duck, when the door exploded. All Might was on the verge of punching him the following second. Derivation of hardening and shock. All for One used his left arm to partially deflect the blow, but he was still knocked back because he was unable to fully absorb the stress. Were 5 distinct hardening peculiarities insufficient to deter him? All Might had the upper hand today, and it was on a completely different level. For the time being, the vision ceased. I have to tell him. Izuku arrived at Ochako's flat on time, which is a marvel for someone who can't stop daydreaming about butterflies or who knows what he might come across while traveling. In order to make it easier to say, "Good morning," to Ochako, he held the scarf in his hands. "Correct?" Izuku twice knocked on the door. No answer. Perhaps he didn't knock hard enough. He did it once more. Nothing. Ochako was in her apartment. She had promised to wait for him here, but she was not responding. Izuku seized the door handle, and because it was unlocked, he entered to check on his friend. The interior was really inexpensive. Izuku intended for it to be both normal and inexpensive. Everything that was required to live and study close to UA. It entails a bed, a bathroom, adequate supplies to cook, and personal items like a picture of Ochako with her parents, which is likely the first time Ochako displayed her peculiarity. Izuku thought he heard water coming from the back of the flat. Oh, I see. Ochako was showering. A shower? Now that the water had stopped, Izuku was in Ochako's apartment, in the center of the living room, and a long way from the door given how long it would be until Ochako left the restroom. The only choice is to hide someplace and hope she doesn't discover him at the most inconvenient time. Just before he heard a door open, Izuku hid behind a tiny sofa. Ochako was humming a song he couldn't identify, so she went into the kitchen and got something. A phone was dialed, and hopefully Ochako couldn't see Izuku from there. Now he just needed to walk back to the door slowly, open it even more slowly without making any noise, and knock on it once more. She was talking to her parents, saying, "Hey mom, it's me." How ideal, since if he is caught, not only will Ochako call him a pervert, but her parents might also want to try a small-scale murder of a particular green-haired kid. Izuku attempted to go once, but he turned around after briefly noticing Ochako's back. He was afraid to see her, but he noticed something else instead. Izuku's reasoning. Ochako is naked since she just emerged from the restroom. Friends? Yes. I already told you. Everyone in Class 1A is a nice person. Well, except this Bakugo guy. He is definitely a bad person, but I guess UA intends to keep him any. OUM meant this kind of fry friend? That's a very personal question. Izuku attempted to approach the door once more after noticing Ochako's shadow going away. This time, he reached the door handle. Buddha. What is the intended to implement that harassing your son or daughter with their boy or girlfriend is a family tradition? He is not. No, I had one, but I didn't admit it, however. Yes, there is. You know the man I met on the admission exam? He's the only male in my class. Izuku paused. Yes, the person with the voluminous hair. I think I really like him. You know how he makes me feel good. Don't do this, you have the wrong idea. When Ochako's mother was bothering her, Izuku had had enough and took advantage of the situation to open the door and leave before it was too late. The girl really likes him? He shook his head to avoid thinking about this kind of thing and tapped on the door. Oh, please wait a minute. From the opposite side of her apartment, he heard Ochako shout. It was time for him to relax. It was 3 years ago. Acquired powerlessness. Izuku, do you know what this is? You're going to tell me whether or not I have the correct definition, so what good would it do if I got the same answer? Izuku responded in a tone that seemed bored. Sensei laughed and replied, "Thank you for your amazing example of learned helplessness. I don't even need to find one now." I don't think I understand. Oh, I see. Did you anticipate that I would say something along these lines? No, but I must admit I hoped you would. Sensei got up and reached for a remote control for one of his screens. After pressing a few buttons, a game called Jeopardy appeared on one of the TVs. Izuku recognized this one since it was a historical entertainment game. Learned helplessness. See those candidates? The reason the others are now hardly making an effort to catch up is that they have lost too much time, while one of them is far ahead. It seems reasonable. Why play a game where you have no chance of winning? The other candidates' faces betrayed their desire to go as quickly as possible, and Izuku felt sad for them. You are right, but you aren't seeing my point. When you arrived here 2 years ago, in what kind of mental state do you think I found you? Izuku looked down and said, "Oh, yes, I remember." He looked pitiful at the moment, laughing and crying simultaneously in front of Sensei's lair, and he said, "It wasn't the best day in my life." "Oh, there will be worse than that, don't worry. Do I need to thank you once more now? I take it that you will now explain to me how you assisted me in overcoming this learned helplessness." "Ha ha ha, no. I just noticed that you looked slightly off since the last week, so decided to cheer you up a little. Sometimes you need to look behind you to really understand what you have in front of you." Hee. I will write this one down. I hope you're not copying every single quote I've spoken. Are you? Izuku smiled slightly and lifted his shoulder. Sometimes I wonder why the universe pushed us to meet. Now, even though it wasn't particularly cold outdoors, Ochako was wearing her typical brown coat when she eventually unlocked the door and left her apartment. She expressed regret for being late, saying, "Sorry, I just got out of the shower." "It's nothing." When Izuku realized he had something for his friend, he turned away and offered Ochako the green scarf he had taken out of his backpack. "Whoa, Izuku, that's incredible. Oh my goodness, you shouldn't have it either. I mean, go good. I'm sorry if the color is a bit off, but I couldn't make up my mind, so I just chose, and here we are. Hee." After examining it, Ochako seemed to like it and wore it right away. Izuku believed she looked even adorable wearing the scarf. "How about we begin right away? I mean," Ochako suggested, "it's not like anyone else is coming." "Yeah, so are you planning on going somewhere? Why don't you choose Izuku? You must know a lot of good and tasty restaurants in this area." The only places Izuku was truly accustomed to going outside of his apartment were Sensei's lair and a well he would have if he hadn't been afraid of an explosive attacker every time he left his apartment. "Yes, I do. But it's a little improper, so I'm not sure you'll enjoy it." "And no, let's leave, it will be fantastic, I'm sure." It was 5 years ago. Body extension, hardness, toxic skin, fluidity, regeneration A5. They were both chucking everything they owned, but he never had to do it since no one had ever scared him this much or pushed him to the edge of his comfort zone. He was already aware, he had come to terms with the fact that he couldn't win, and now he was afraid that everyone would undoubtedly beat him in the end. In an instant, the entire area surrounding them was demolished, including the ancient warehouse where they had first engaged in combat. All for One was unable to detect any presence other than All Might's, and they were alone. His presence would be kept secret, and no one would be aware that he had passed away. Like Nana Shimura, the sign of peace was nearing its limit even with One for All. All Might appeared to slow down, and All for One observed something. Smoke? It wasn't dust, obviously, but it was coming from All Might's body. Skin Spike All Might didn't see it coming, but it worked, and now he had a number of needles pierced deeply in his left hand. It was a one-time use trump card because it hurt a lot to just activate it and create the spikes. Was he even in agony when the peace symbol paused briefly before launching another round of blows at All for One? "It's over," the peace symbol yelled. As he realized what was about to happen, All for One made every effort to go as far away as he could. The air practically screamed, and the pressure from the smoke rising from All Might's body increased. All for One has come to an end, therefore, it would be one for all. Essential since time is unity and nothing can move as quickly as the light, nobody wants to experience that. Therefore, All for One would have the opportunity to harm the peace symbol and cause him to suffer a death wound within this 1 minute. However, he was clueless about what would come next. Today, Izuku was pleased to show Ochako his favorite spot, which lies after Sensei's lair. Here we are. Municipal Beach Park Dagoba. Hey. Are you certain that this is the correct location? Ochako pretended to be amused and smiled, but she was very worried about Izuku's sanity given that she was standing in front of a junkyard that was full of old wheels, refrigerators, TVs, computers, and whatever else you could find in a location like this. "No, that's the proper location. Come on over." As he began to climb a mound, Izuku extended an invitation for Ochako to take his hand. Reluctantly, she took his hand and followed Izuku, who surprised her with how well organized the pile appeared. The path Izuku was walking resembled a staircase, and even more unexpectedly, a sofa was waiting for them at the top. Even though this site was full of rubbish, it was incredibly clean, and Ochako liked it. Izuku made himself a wonderful dwelling out of junk, like a treehouse in a garden. "I did some adjustments as I'm used to come here often, make yourself comfortable." "Izuku, that's fantastic." She took a seat on the couch, which was really comfortable. Thank you. Izuku sat near to Ochako, but not too close. I've been coming here every day after school for 5 years, and no one would follow me here. It's a junkyard. Will you follow me here? What are you saying? All right. Since not everyone is kind and obviously not everyone can distinguish between right and wrong, it frequently happens that someone wants to beat me up for reasons other than my peculiarities. You always hid here. They gazed at the horizon, where the tide was rising, and said, no, sometimes I would go somewhere else. May I ask you a few questions? Unsettling inquiries? He tried to seem normal, but his use of explicit language was excessive. If it's not about gore things or never mind, not what I wanted to say, Jay, just go on. All okay. Sue. Which kind of quirk would you prefer if you had one? If I had a. Imagine having a quirk that would enable you to steal other people's quirks. Do you believe that might happen? Ochako was taken aback since she had never heard of such a thing because quirks weren't something you could take away from young children like a lollipop. You are the one who asked me what kind of power I would like to have, if you were only being truthful. Just imagine for a moment, being able to use any kind of quirk just by taking it. Sharing quirks with this kind of power, it would even be possible to definitely stop villains. Is that what you meant when you said you wanted to be the good villain? Ochako asked, her smile gone, her expression troubled. Remember? When you showed me your costume, you told me that. Did you choose this design because you want to have this power? No, of course not. This is because he is merely a naive fanboy who aspires to be as cool as his sensei, who used to be the world's most notorious villain. Yes, was all he said. Don't you believe that this is somewhat extreme, taking away something that makes someone special, taking away their individuality? That's a. Ochako's voice sounded serious, yet she still had a frightened expression. That's a. Dreadful. Completed Izuku's individuality. Tell me what makes me unique if you believe that people's peculiarities are what make them so wonderful. Nothing? Izuku raised his voice, even though he knew he shouldn't have, but he had no choice. What I meant to say was, I apologize for hurting you. I meant to say that you should be cautious about why you take away someone's quirk and make sure it's for the appropriate reasons if you had this power. Izuku turned aside. I apologize as well. I should have screamed at you. How about we grab a bite to eat? Ice cream if you want, was her actual choice this time, as it was most likely the least expensive item in the area. Izuku had learned a lot about Ochako, including the fact that she liked lemon ice cream, that brown was one of her favorite colors, that she might or might not have hinted at having a crush on Izuku, and that she had inadvertently labeled their hangout a date, although she was unaware of it at the time. After bringing Ochako back to her apartment, Izuku found himself alone once more. They both hoped that the upcoming week wouldn't be as hectic as the previous one. It was a pleasant day, and the universe's gods were of great assistance to him. He was now anticipating the punishment. Izuku's mother called him when he was en route to his flat. Yes, Mew. Izuku, I apologize, but I had to use your mother's phone. Sensei using his mother's phone, was that him? Did you stole? Sensei hung up, saying, don't worry, she won't notice. I have to tell you something really important. Join me as soon as possible. This was the first time he had ever been truly terrified of anything. Izuku walked more quickly because he still had time to meet Sensei and learn what was so urgent before heading home, and he was unaware that Nedzu had sent him a letter shortly after he had hung up with All for One. It was 5 years ago. He knew souls existed. After a few generations, it seemed apparent considering how some oddities operated, but he never able to prove it, so why would he be in heaven? No, he couldn't be in paradise. It was evident after all. If he was in heaven, there was a huge mistake. He attempted to open his eyes, but he was unable to do so. They were both locked and closed, and he was unable to feel them. In fact, his face felt oddly soft, as though it were blank, as thaw. Bringing his hand to his face, All for One noticed something metallic between his face and his hand. Did he get caught? No, he would have been dead by now. Why even bother asking this question? Is he still alive? He attempted to rise up, but he was only able to move a few centimeters due to something fastened to his head. If I were you, I wouldn't do that. This voice was familiar to All for One. Daruma. What took place? Even if you had all might, the fight didn't go as planned. I shouldn't be the one to show you. Simply utilize your peculiarities. Third Eye and echo the memory of this one day was too painful. Izuku was slow, and Sensei was growing angry. What was going on with him? Did he call him too late? When the door opened, Izuku was there. Are you okay, Sensei? The teenager was asked if it was comforting to witness his teacher trembling so much that he was having trouble standing. The words, "Yes I am. I need to warn you, so listen because this is very important," or perhaps the last time he has used such a frightened tone in 5 years. Even though I may have misled you about my brother, I did not mean to harm him when I told you that I had given him a quirk. Izuku appeared unfazed and didn't seem to mind if Sensei told him lies, especially if they were about something that was upsetting him. Yes. However, what's so crucial? My brother never lost against me, in fact he won. I was defeated during our last confrontation 5 years ago, Sensei said bluntly. He didn't simply leave me dead, he took, all for one, put his hands behind his neck. For the first time in 5 years, Sensei was removing the mask in front of Izuku when it moved. My face, along with my ability to use a great quantity of the quirks I possess. What the heck is this? Is this a joke? Sensei tells me it's a quirk, thus it's not real. It was monstrous. No yes no no's, only a mass of melted white flesh. What kind of people would do that to someone, even if they are a villain? You are merely molding your face rig. It's not a quirk Izuku, not this time. This is what happened to me 5 years ago, my retribution for losing. Sensei sneezed. The air was so dry. Now you must wonder how my brother managed to become as old as me. Well, we both have our trick. I admit I have some sort of immortality quirk. I won't go into the details, but my ability to die has been suppressed. All for one coughed once more forcefully this time, and had to use the metal table in the middle of the room to stay upright. Sensei looked up again to see Izuku standing in front of him, holding his helmet. I'm sorry, it always happens when. Put it back if you need it, wasn't a suggestion, rather, it was a directive. All for one was being given instructions by a child as though he were his physician. I never thought he could be so poetic, Sensei said, grabbing the helmet and placing it back on his head. My brother survives through a quirk he named One for All, the quirk created to stop All for One. One for All. Izuku repeated. I thought he was quirkless when I gave him a quirk, so I didn't pay any attention and tried to do it quickly enough to avoid hurting him. I learned that oddity may fuse at that point. It would seem pointless at first, but what if a quirk that allows the user to store energy could be passed down from generation to generation? My brother had a hidden quirk that was inactive because it served no purpose. His birth quirk allowed him to pass his quirk on to someone else. That's how One for All operates, then. Since each generation outperforms the previous one, is this a legacy of any kind? Is your brother's legacy One for All? Yes, but I really believe there is more. Izuku's mission remains unchanged. One for All was created to murder All for One in order to put an end to it. He is still outside. But I took no action, believe me. I have enough motive to kill you because you have the same peculiarity as me. You have already met and are aware of the present One for All. I did? Who is this sensei? Komon, you can figure this out without my help? Izuku exhaled, and then it dawned on him that One for All is ultimately some kind of strength-enhancing quirk. All Might. Did he do you this? Great job. You are still quick with your brain. All Might didn't leave our last confrontation indemn. I gave him some sort of goodbye. Today he is thousands of times weaker than he was 5 years ago. Do you not think he appears elderly? Sensei's words reverberated in Izuku's mind. Everything made sense now, it was so clear. You were aware of it, but why are you just now warning me? Since the Usha know, since you informed me that you desired to visit the United States of America. I was aware that, regardless of your moral convictions, you would have to use All for One. All Might would be teaching at UA, I knew. And I apologize. I didn't mean to endanger you, but I suppose it's too late. You're not to blame. I couldn't have made it to UA without your assistance. Most likely, I would be deceased. After dismissively waving his hand at Izuku, Sensei leaned back in his chair and said, I would like to help you, but for the time being you will be on your own. Sensei handed Izuku a small piece of paper with a number scrawled on it. Here, take your phone and add this contact. At least All for One tried. Is it yours? Call me whenever you want. It will be safer this way. Unless there is an emergency, don't come here from now on. I do not wish to further involve you. How long do you suppose we'll be? Hopefully, this will all be over soon. Oh, and good luck. Good luck. The athletic festival in the United Arab Emirates is approaching, correct? I sincerely hope you'll prove to them who you are. Izuku grinned and said, Sensei, I will. Waving at All for One, he exited the basket after grabbing his luggage. The words, I miss the time when things were simple, were uttered by Sensei. After leaving, Izuku added Sensei to his phone's contacts list. Just as he was ready to put his phone back in his pocket, he discovered that Nezu had sent him a message. He read the headline, which discussed the sport festival and the next phase of his life at the University of Arizona. Izuku was a class representative, so it made sense that he would have some responsibilities during the event. Nezu asked him to come to UA over the weekend to talk about some opening ceremony stuff, and he was already picturing Katsuki yelling and insulting everyone without any justification, which made him laugh. As if he had ever given a damn about anyone but himself, people may now realize that he is not and never will be a hero. Izuku reflected on the revelation of all for one. One for all and all for one. Sensei must have committed some pretty horrible acts to encourage his brother of the one person he genuinely want to support and shield above all others to take his own life. Izuku secretly hoped that All Might was different, but Sensei's current condition kept telling him that he needed to exercise additional caution around the peace symbol. Izuku hasn't responded yet, but I'm sure he will tomorrow. I apologize, Toshinori. You made a wise decision. Nezu returned his phone to his desk and gathered with All Might around a tiny table that had a tea set ready. A little late, my little altercation with this Nomu beast has further degraded me. I hope that I could personally train him, but I might not have as much time as I had anticipated. Nezu made a cup for All Might, saying, that's how it works, you give the torch to the next generation and you watch them do the same. Who would have guessed that All for One would bring about his own demise? I wonder how long One for All will be required. It's a miracle in the end. Quote, I guess higher powers must have balanced the game, even if it took a few centuries to truly win over him. Yes, I hope this burden doesn't fall on anyone. All Might gazed at his image in the cup. Is something amiss? The principal was asked. Oh, I just wanted to know how Nana would manage Izuku's training. To be honest, I picked it up very away, and she skipped most of what she had to say. Izuku's training is probably going to be different, and he might not even be physically ready. You underestimate this kid too much. Izuku is quirkless, he had a rough life, and if he made it here alone then he is far stronger than any student at UA. All Might laughed. It made him think of a certain oddball youngster who had a difficult childhood too. The following day, the principal thanked Izuku and assured him that it wouldn't take long, hopefully, after he replied to Nezu that he would arrive at UA at approximately 10 in the morning. Before leaving, Inko asked Izuku how Sensei was doing and stated that she too needed to go out, although she did not explain why. He refrained from discussing One for All because everything was going great and he didn't need to share the news that he was on the Deadpool of the peace symbol. After arriving at UA without incident, Izuku proceeded to Nezu's office, where the principal was waiting for him in front of the doors. Izuku, good morning. I appreciate you coming as quickly as you could. Although we still have a week to prepare, I thought you would be interested in knowing your position in the ceremony beforehand. Why yes, thank you Principal Nezu. Please, you don't need to be so formal. Shall we enter? Nezu easily pushed the enormous doors and waited for Izuku to enter his office. Izuku recalled that, other from the ideal unknown man who appeared to be a really awful zombie cosplayer lounging in a sofa, not much changed while he was here. You must have seen him at UA, Izuku. I'm here to see you, Toshinori. He works for me, and he will remain here while I go over what you need to accomplish during the sport festival ceremony. Izuku turned around and bowed, saying, oh of course, good morning. Toshinori held out his hand for Izuku to shake, saying, thank you, young man. Izuku was going to do so, as was normal, but as he got close to his hand, he felt nauseous and his entire body instantly heated up. He halted, but Toshinori came up and took Izuku's hand. Izuku tried to look as natural as possible, but All for One was hurting him. It hadn't happened in years since Sensei helped him use and regulate his quirk, and now his hand was burning. Something was seriously wrong with this man. When Toshinori released his hand, Izuku saw right away that it was red hot. He concealed it behind his head and pretended to be scratching it. In fact, even Toshinori had an odd expression. Was he feeling uncomfortable too? Toshinori attempted to grin, but he was also experiencing hand agony. The last time he had this was when Izuku, you are aware that you received the highest score on the entrance exam, correct? Ignoring this awkward moment, I asked the principal. Nezu informed Izuku that he was the one who awarded him all of these points and that none of the judges would have allowed him to enter. Izuku sat in front of Nezu and said, why yes, I do. Good, because as the best student from the entrance exam you will have to make a short speech to open the festival. Wait what? A brief speech? You seem taken aback. I assumed you were aware of this, but but you didn't realize when watching TV. Izuku was aware of this and would even watch the replays multiple times, but he never understood why a student would be assigned to give a speech. Instead, he assumed that UA selected a representative from the class at random and asked him to do so. What should I say? So. Typically, the focus is on the competition and keeping it equitable and fun for everybody. Izuku specifically insisted on using the term fun to avoid upsetting Nezu, as Aizawa would. I understand that it's always difficult, but this is merely an example. Feel free to say anything you want and use it as motivation. Boost? Izuku found no justification for referring to a possible live humiliation as a boost. Yes. There will be many professionals there, so now is the ideal moment to demonstrate your abilities. It had previously been difficult for Izuku to enter UA and even to go past Aizawa, but he demonstrated that he was stronger than everyone in his class, even without a quirk, so Nezu had to include this someplace. Izuku. Nezu could see something different, resolve, even though the USJ made the 1A strong. I suppose you're correct. I'll figure something out. Is there anything I should share with my classmates? No, that will be everything. I thought this would go on a little longer, but it only took a few minutes. Nezu continued to stare at Toshinori, waiting for the peace symbol to lead the way, but nothing came of it. Izuku returned his bag to his shoulders and walked out of the office, saying, "Thank you, have a nice day." Toshinori remained still during the entire exchange. What's the matter? Toshinori, you have the ideal moment to talk to me. Was Nezu hesitating? He was so perplexed. I am unable to. There is a problem with this child. Wrong. I am unable to explain, yet, I get the odd feeling that there is something inside of him that I am unable to access. I must leave. As it turned out, Izuku was right to stay in the United Arab Emirates and listened behind the door. He became even more dubious of Nezu's alleged sport festival information appointment after that. Nezu stated unequivocally that Toshinori wanted to do something, but what something had been planned that had to do with this individual. The man was ready to leave Nezu's office, so Izuku had to conceal for the time being. As Toshinori pulled out his phone and started to move behind the main building, he hurried off, nearly rushing away without even noticing Izuku behind him. Toshinori needed to phone a reliable person. Izuku continued to follow Toshinori until he stopped. He was now making a call, but his expression was still one of worry, even more so than when he had left Nezu's office. Night Eye. Is that you? Look who is calling. Well. Are you finally giving my suggestion some thought? Even though Izuku was unable to hear every detail of their talk, it sounded as though he had previously heard something. No. Izuku had heard this name somewhere. Look, Night Eye. Night Eye, as All Might's old sidekick? I should just end this call since you never listen. What's going on? I believe Aya. Look, I think I've identified someone who deserves to be One for All's next user, Buddha. One for All? How is this man aware of One for All? There is no way. Izuku looked at the man again. His mind was functioning as it had never before, and it was clearly clear from the eyes, face, and hair. This man was All Might, wasn't he? I gave him some sort of goodbye. Was Sensei's voice echoing in Izuku's mind once more? Izuku understood it had to do with the well-known goodbye. All for One mentioned. Would it be an injury? But it must be the bizarre item Izuku saw on All Might's torso at the USJ just before he passed out from being struck by the Nomu. I already told you I do not want to hear about any of this unless it's about. I felt All for One. The voice on the other end of the phone ceased yelling. I'm not sure. Buddha, look, I shaken this kid's hand, and my hand burned, exactly like when he tried to hurt Nana. And me 5 years prior. Izuku's worry was now being confirmed by Toshinori, or rather All Might, who was pursuing him as the symbol of peace, but he had no evidence, right? Is he dead or not? This is serious. Did the battle come to an end 5 years ago? Tell me you did, please. All Might didn't respond. Instead, he simply stood against the railing with the phone beside his head. He didn't have to respond since, of course, he believed All for One was dead after witnessing what he had done, and Toshinori could still discern whether he had taken a life or not despite his weakness. How about family members? Dita? Izuku clenched his teeth and said, we found nothing. You searched with us. This man had no family and never tried to have one. Sensei wasn't a nice person, but he would never harm innocent people for fun. In fact, he went so far as to befriend Izuku when he could have killed him rather than risking his life to let him go. More than that, though, he healed him and gave him courage and strength. All Might felt he heard something, but he didn't see anyone or anything odd nearby, so Izuku left after having had enough and headed for the UA gates. Despite your stubbornness, I trust your instincts, therefore you wouldn't be phoning me unless you're right. Tell me the specifics of what happened. Izuku made a mistake. His only goal was to stay away from All Might, everyone connected to him, and one for all. In this case, he only succeeded in hinting at his real identity to the last person he should have. In a sense, however, he now knew who knew about One for All. Night Eye, the principal, and Mirio Tagata. All Might identified him as a possible heir, although Mirio didn't seem to be his final pick. Izuku made the decision to watch Mirio in case he ever met him. He pulled out his phone and began texting Sensei everything he found, but he stopped because, first, he probably already knew something about it, second, he didn't need to get even more involved and frighten Sensei, and third, he had other things to prepare. Monday. In order to prepare for the celebration and bolster security, Izuku and his classmates received a letter from Nezu stating that UA will be closed this week. Although that sounded like excellent news, Nezu was actually stating that as their homeroom instructor, Aizawa was still recovering from his injuries and would not be able to work with his classes, meaning that half of their time at UA would be wasted without him. Naturally, All Might was present, but Izuku had his own explanation for why he was unable to take Aizawa's place. Finally, Nezu made it evident that the League of Villains might strike the United Arab Emirates once more when he discussed stepping up security. The final issue was that Izuku had no idea what he needed to work on this week, so he was unable to ask Sensei to train him, and it sounded way out of place to ask Ochako if she was available to practice with him. Izuku had to take action since he couldn't stay in his bedroom all week feeling afraid. Izuku assured Sensei that he would prevail, but without any special abilities. A year ago. It's so boring, Izuku chose to visit Sensei's lair despite having some work to do. All for One didn't mind because as long as Izuku was around, it was fun. At the moment, he was frantically pressing all of the TV remote's buttons. Do you require assistance? Since he was blind, he assumed Sensei could locate the correct button when he asked the teenager who was strolling beside All for One. I'm simply sad that I can't locate the kind of movie I enjoy. I might have to steal them, but it's okay. These days, nobody watches this kind of content. Sensei paused and let go of the control. What genre of film do you enjoy watching? Yes, it's not truly a kind. Are you familiar with the CIA? Well, does it have anything to do with America? Yes, I'm happy you have some awareness of this. The CIA is a federal agency that was established to gather information globally. Awareness was a powerful weapon in the past. In the past, people apparently enjoyed making up stories about their employment, even though this organization was supposed to be discreet. It must have been great. It was comics, movies, etc. Now people think that all you need to conserve peace and power is just a big mass of muscles or some Superman, Sensei said, sounding a little irritated. I won't talk about the toys. Izuku was waiting for something else when he glanced at Sensei. Izuku, always remember that knowledge is a sword, a double-edged one but a sword nonetheless. A sword, Izuku said again to himself. Now that he had a valid excuse to call Ochako, Izuku picked up his phone once more and made the call. Uraraka responds. Hello, Izuku, how are you? Thank you, I'm all right. I hope I'm not bothering you. Not at all. Excellent. Izuku thought Ochako would be intrigued or at least interested, but unfortunately he merely got a dead line. Because I think I just found a way to get a head start during the sport festival. An advantage? What are you referring to? Shall I also tell the others, Aura? No. Izuku may have used excessive violence in this instance. I mean, you really helped me, so I'm sharing this knowledge with you, but I don't think it would be wise to share anything with the rest of the class. For the time being, that is. Sure. Tell me about it. Can you accompany me to the bus stop next to UA? I can't explain anything just yet. Ochako didn't have to pay because she had previously purchased a subscription, and it wasn't too far. Alright, I'll be here in about 20 minutes, see you later. Ochako ended the call. Izuku picked up his notebook and school bag, reasoning that it would be beneficial to see a number of films with Sensei for once, oddly enough. When Ochako got to the bus stop, she saw Izuku scrawling furiously in his little notepad. Hey! Ochako leapt to embrace Izuku before he could even raise his head. He never in his life hoped a girl would do that. Hey too, he whispered. So, what would you like to share with me? Oh no. But I have more in store for you. I'm going to show you. Come on. Ochako kept searching for something when Izuku took him to a park near to UA. Izuku, what are we? We need a location high enough, Toa. The barriers are much too high, and we can't just enter, right here. Ochako still struggled to determine what her classmate had in mind, even though Izuku was directly beneath a huge tree. Can you assist me in reaching the top? Obviously, he was referring to her peculiarity. It is against the law. What happens if we get cow? Don't worry, Ochako. It's not like there is a cop hiding behind every bush. It will only take a second and no one will say anything. It seemed so simple for Izuku to pose this kind of question, but Ochako felt confident enough to trust her. Of course, utilizing her peculiarity in this way was risky. If someone saw, she would never be able to become a hero. All right. Just this once, okay? Thank you. The two of them glided straight to the top of the tree and found a secure landing location after Ochako took Izuku's hand and used her quirk. It is bending. Izuku grabbed Ochako when she nearly fell and assisted her in sitting on a branch. Take a look. They could see a fantastic stadium next to the main building from where he was pointing through some leaves. Will the festival be held at that location? Exactly. And our purpose is to observe what UA will be hurled at us during the occasion. That is dishonest. No, technically it's preparation. Nothing in the rules, if there even are rules, prevents you from being informed about the events. Consider this as a real situation. Why would you stay uninformed about your opponents when you could have the advantage of knowing things they do not? That makes sense, but is that the reason you chose not to tell the other students about it? To get an advantage? You are free to share any information we will obtain with the rest of the class, but be sure that they will assist at their advantage. So why me? I take it that you could have kept the knowledge to yourself. Izuku chose to write something in his notebook instead of responding, but in actuality, he didn't write anything that made sense. Instead, he was merely rubbing his pen against a piece of paper like a toddler in order to come up with something different than, "Because you are cute and I want to be your boyfriend." He also avoided the inevitable muttering by doing this. Well, every year's sport festival in the United Arab Emirates operates differently. If I may use that term, the first event is a battle royal of sorts, so everyone is on their own. Unless they want to form a team, assuming the event even gave them the chance to do so, the second event, which is always a team event, follows, and the final event is always, also, a little competition between the remaining competitors. Do you wish to collaborate with me? Izuku didn't want to look at Ochako at the moment because of the way he was acting, which suggested that he was either a psychopath or a pervert. You are way more reliable compared to the other members of the class, and your quirk is adaptable to a lot of situations. And also, Izuku looked up at Ochako and said, "Okay." She smiled and added, "I'll do it." Izuku was ready to express his gratitude to her when he realized that his pen had penetrated through his notepad entirely. "Oh, I'll get one more." Ochako laughed and asked, "What will it be?" Izuku glanced around the stadium and saw that the first event was outside, not too far away, and that many trucks and construction engines were constructing a road of some kind. "Honestly, I'm not sure. It's like a circuit all around the stadium." "A race, maybe?" "Yeah, that has to be. If only I had some binoculars, though, it wouldn't really assist us." "How about the other occasions? Are you aware of what to anticipate?" "I would like to, if I knew I could construct the perfect team and develop a strategy. Most of the time it's simple, a minor game like a capture the flag." "All right, that's a bad example." "No, I get it. I'm rather pleased by your level of involvement in this event, but don't you think you're exaggerating everything a little bit? I made a promise to someone significant. I told them that I would win, that I would prove I learned anything from 5 years of training. I will succeed even if I am unable to use a quirk, since I am much stronger than the majority of the students. So I'm hoping you'll win. God, if we have to be against one another, it's going to be awful." "And no. The odds are so slim that it won't happen. And here, what about some delicious ice cream?" A horrible method to dodge a direct question. "Really? Many thanks." And this is most likely the final sensible response Izuku could expect from his closest friend. Wednesday. Izuku had several plans with backups and backups for backups, and he spent 2 days getting ready for the festival. He transformed a blank wall in his room into a large board with red strings and a picture that he had seen in the All for One series, but he didn't think it would work. Speaking of sensei, it was almost time for lunch when Izuku saw he had a message from him on his phone as he was heading into the kitchen with his mother. As sensei would say, there are only optimal plans, not flawless ones. "Dear Izuku, just so you know, I shall be watching the athletic festival. To write this message, I was able to discover the vocal button on my phone. You're probably considering employing All for One a little bit covertly, but I don't think it will be sufficient. Do you recall the peculiarities you acquired from the USJ? They still have no owner, and to be honest, I already own 100 or so of this type. Use all of your strength for once, nobody will notice. You will have to give it your all one day, and perhaps now is the right moment. I have been telling you for years that you were born with a vast power that is neither good nor bad. Think on my message even though it's nothing new and I'm probably just bugging you again. When I say this, I wish I could be beside you, but right now, I can't. My offer is still in effect. Contact me whenever you need me, and I'll be there. Izuku smiled weakly, not sure whether to thank or resent Sensei for bringing back all this tale of snatching idiosyncrasies from a monster on his head, but he was right, always was. Izuku. It will be cold on your platter, Mom, I'm coming. His mother had made some yakitori, but Izuku wanted more meat for the sport festival, so he put his phone back on his desk and went to the kitchen. Mom, may I hear your perspective? Sure, of course. What are you thinking about, my love? All right. As you can see, I might have taken a few oddities from the USJ during the villain's attack, but I really didn't have much of an option. It's okay. I understand if those people use their quirk to make other people suffer then. It's more complicated than you may imagine. I didn't exactly steal a villain's peculiarities. They were no longer human. One of their creatures was named Nomu. When I am close enough to someone who has a quirk or ice, I can feel it when I touch them, but this time was different since it was so chaotic and someone managed to melt everyone together into this monstrosity. Izuku, I'm very sorry you had to go through this. That's terrible. After I handed Sensei the oddity I had stolen, he messaged me to offer to bring them back for the sport festival. It's just a bunch of strength training, so nobody would notice, but it's strange, peculiar, and every time I think about the Nomu, I can't bring myself to accept his offer. It's wrong. Izuku, even if it is difficult to say goodbye to those people, you are not accountable for what happened to them, and while it is hoped that they are now in a better place, their peculiarities still exist. I'm sure that folks would allow you to utilize their quirk if it's for a good cause, therefore I would agree if I were you. Really? Izuku smiled. Yes. Eat now before the food cools down. Inko devoured her own plate with fervor. Mom. Izuku said, raising an eyebrow. You weren't only hungry when you said this, were you? With her mouth full of flesh, Inko turned to face her son and said, no, absolutely not. I'm just making sure you're ready for your festival. You shouldn't eat cold food, she gulped. Oh, by the way, how does your speech sound? Izuku grimaced. He obviously forgot entirely, and Nezu must have written his mother a letter requesting that she check it every 5 minutes. Don't worry, it will be ready even if I haven't started yet. Have you decided on a topic yet? What will you discuss? Well, I thought I could discuss sports and other topics in general, but nothing you hear on the radio every day can pique anyone's attention or be heard. For once, I would want to discuss a topic that interests me personally and is completely different. Well, then you won't require my assistance. Izuku didn't get it. His mother and her dish vanished in an instant. Has he been talking by himself, or has he simply stopped talking after his mother stopped talking? The festival day. The day had arrived for the UA Athletic Festival, and crowds were forming around the main gate in hopes of securing a spot before it was too late. Izuku had to arrive early to organize the opening ceremony, but he did nothing. Nezu was eager to see what Izuku had prepared, so maybe UA had a special entry for invitees and students. The principal himself greeted Izuku, and after discussing certain specifics in his office, Nezu concluded reading Izuku's writing. The principal was perplexed and repeatedly glanced back at Izuku's notepad before returning it to his desk. Are you certain you wish to peruse this? You still have time, Toa? No, sir, do not worry, I'm sure some people will understand. The teacher murmured. I do not approve for your own good, but this is your choice after all. I really hope you know what you are doing. You should go now, your friends must be waiting. Yes, sir, I appreciate your assistance. Nezu was ready to summon Izuku back since he had forgotten his notebook, but he was halted by curiosity. Izuku bowed before leaving the office. The principal chose to review the earlier pages and was not misled. He discovered that there were at least 10 pages with endless material. How much time did you actually spend on this? Izuku repeatedly reiterated Sensei's advice regarding his speech. Okay. Just walk to the mic and speak. Do not pay attention to whatever may happen, and for God's sake do not talk too quickly or too low. He asked Sensei if he was satisfied with his first 12th but first truly good version. Without any delay, All for One, surprisingly, sent back a comprehensive instruction on political speeches and the pitfalls he should absolutely avoid. First of all, If that's even the correct way to describe how Izuku envisioned his audience, he should never attempt to make them laugh, especially when around 80% of them simply want to see him go. Second, Sensei says that we and I usually imply the same thing, so he should be extremely careful about how he uses them. Lastly, he probably shouldn't try to taunt everyone in the stadium. This final statement most likely indicated that Sensei was simply waiting for him to disprove them all. Though Izuku omitted something, the remainder of the course was made up of hundreds of helpful examples. Just before the speech, he neglected to ask Sensei how to get rid of any fear-related feelings. When Izuku sensed someone hopping on his back, he let out a loud cry, "Izuku hey," and also scared Ochako. Sorry. I didn't mean to startle you, the young girl said in apology. It's okay hi too, Izuku said, returning his little piece of paper in his pocket where he had written the final draft of his speech. Ochako asked, "Is that your speech?" "Why yeah. Why you wanna read it?" "No, I'm fine, it would just spoil everything if I did. I want to discover what you wrote for the opening of the festival." Sure. Where is everyone?" "Waiting next to the locker rooms, we are about to head out to the stadium." Oh, and Katsuki is in a very bad mood. With a sigh, Izuku turned to face Ochako and asked, "Oh great. Do I even need to ask why?" "Why?" Well, apparently he was expecting to do the opening speech, but I guess he forgot that he was only second during the entrance exam. I doubt he did, but anyway, I'm sure he would have said something stupid and arrogant like, "I will murder you all. Your beloved author is contemplating the meaning of life and some strange religious ideas elsewhere in another universe." No, really. I live in France, and every time I try to watch the news or anything else, it emphasizes how we will perish in roughly 5 hours. Depressed, what the devil is wrong with them? Really, one of the headlines said that every person on the street was a terrorista, which is obviously untrue, but still, guys. In any case. Again, what was I saying? Izuku is not that far from the truth, and sure, our universe is wonderful and all that. Humanity is not doomed or anything, however some of us are simply meh. And I may fall into this category. I feel so much better now. Woo, don't buy gold. Probably, the other classes are already jealous, if I may say. Our adventure at the USJ gave us a certain notoriety, stated Ochako. Right before I left to fond you, they were all trying to get a good look at us. Izuku truly imagined a random student walking by the locker room with the other students after him like a herd of sheep. Anyway, we are going to be late. Are you still okay with our little arrangement?" he asked. "For what? To scare us?" "Of course." The girl exclaimed, "I'm sure we can win together." "Great. Show me the way." I had to post this meme someplace in the interim. All for One was preparing to witness a magnificent demonstration of his students' strength and brains. He hoped, at least, that everything would go as planned. He had the impression that, yes, All for One felt proud, but it would be completely wrong for him to place himself in that situation, of his labor. Despite the fact that nothing in this universe is free, he occasionally deserved a small recompense. He pondered what cosmic force had been kind enough to place Izuku in his path. In the end, he expressed gratitude and made no further requests. When his phone rang, he was expecting a message from his beloved student, but instead he got something unexpected and quite different. "Hey, while Izuku was out last week, I happened to locate his phone and wondered if he had your number. I should have asked him directly, but I wasn't sure where you lived or if he would even give it to me. Sorry again if I'm invading. Since you already know where we live and I would be delighted to have someone at our place, I was wondering if you would be interested in watching the sport festival with me. If you are not interested in joining me, that's okay too. What am I even saying? I'm the one inviting you. Feel free to stop over. I made some tea and may have enough stuff to make katsudon." Inko had the same problem as her son, which was to constantly apologize, but he liked that she knew how to use words. When his student was sending hell itself over his opponents, he couldn't resist a lovely cup of tea, so he was prepared to stop by as soon as Inko offered. Even if he was unable to see it directly. The majority of the students appeared enthusiastic about the athletic festival, while the others either didn't seem to care or didn't really pay any particular attention to the event. Izuku and Ochako rejoined the rest of the class in front of the locker room. Oh, and Katsuki was giving Izuku an unwarranted glare. Hey everyone. Is everything alright? Izuku saluted, uncertain of the class's present attitude in light of Ochako's previous report. The moment Kirishima saw Izuku, he joined him right away, saying, "Yeah. This is going to be awesome. There will be so many heroes watching us." In the back of his mind, Izuku wondered whether Kirishima had been swayed by some malevolent force to remind him that he was going to deliver a very contentious speech in front of thousands of viewers on television and, as he stated, hundreds of professionals. Fantastic. His response was a simple, "See cool," with a forced smile. As the other students soon come toward Izuku, one of them pushes Kirishima away as if he were nothing since he is more quicker and more determined. "Hey man. Watch if," the pupil complains. Surprisingly, Katsuki looks at Izuku instead of retaliating against the red-haired student. "You shithead. I will show everyone out here how useless and pathetic your quirkless ass is. You won't even make it to the second round." As if someone had taken their souls from this world, the room abruptly grew icy and lifeless, and no one dared to speak. In fact, they couldn't. There was no doubt about it. Izuku was smiling rather than upset or afraid. Time slowed down until Izuku moved his lips, and even Katsuki recoiled in response. He began, "Fine." There was a brief silence. "Good luck, then," vanished from the aura, leaving Katsuki unable to speak. Through the speakers, Present Mike's unrecognizable voice declared, "Attention, students, please proceed to the stadium along with your class," and with a very precise organization. Unless of course some of you don't care at all about being picked for the upcoming nominations and potential recruiting. Momo was in charge. "All right everyone, let's go. Izuku and I will lead the class. Just avoid to form a big circle like he just asked." In the meantime, at the flat of Midoriya, I'm not sure how to describe it. In addition to being more nervous than she had ever been, Inko was also anticipating a very special visitor and was terrified and impatient to see her son in action for the first time. Most often, panic breaks out. To make sure she didn't forget anything, she continued going back and forth between the kitchen and the living room. She searched for the salt for 5 minutes before realizing she had been holding it in her hands for that long. She let out a sigh and briefly closed her eyes. She needed to regain her composure because she couldn't appear strange in front of Izuku's finest. Even so, what was their relationship? Friends? Student-teacher? She opened her eyes and shook her head. She wasn't shocked to see him standing in front of her, she was just feeling really ill at the time. This was an honest question. "Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. I knocked at the door but you weren't answering." In actuality, he didn't knock at the door either. Instead, he asked someone to lead him straight inside the apartment so that he couldn't be seen on the streets. "So I just came in and, well, here I am. Do you need a hand?" All for One offered Inko his right hand, which she gratefully accepted. Thank you. I'm so happy to see that you came here today. Don't worry about me. Just make yourself comfortable. It's about to start. I'll bring some tea." Beneath his metal mask, All for One grinned, really liking Inko. After Izuku, she was maybe the second most innocent person on the planet. Unfortunately, given his lengthy record of criminal deeds, it is likely that they will not cross paths in the afterlife. Returning to the UA, this is becoming tiresome. Izuku had no idea that UA would have so many first-year students. Present Micah, who was reportedly the commentary guy, did not miss the opportunity to remind everyone in the stadium that Class 1A survived the villain attack at the USJ and other things as he entered the stadium with his class. With a groan, Izuku glanced at the other classes, who were all staring at his class more than Katsuki had been a few minutes before. "Don't pay too much attention to them," remarked Momo. "I'm sure most of them won't make it to the secondary round." Izuku cursed in her head that Momo really didn't need to conclude her statement with a statement that could, and would, come off as narcissistic to anyone who was close enough to hear it. Midnight was here. Every class halted in front of a tribune that was erected in the middle of the stadium. Fantastic. Ochako was trying her hardest to maintain her poise in front of the camera. Her parents must have been watching after her. "See, come on everyone, smile." Denki said, "Holy moly, are all those people pro-heroes?" Mezzo's response, "Calm down, only the citizens are cheering, the others are just smiling," somewhat dampened the class's enthusiasm. At midnight, the crowd was silenced as a whip passed through the stadium's air. Representing the students is Izuku Midoriya from Class 1A. Well, here I go. He nearly overlooked this particular aspect. Returning to the Midoriya home, again. Look, that's him. Inko frantically gestured toward the television screen. "I can't see," he reminded his host as he moved his head toward her, even though he didn't have to. Oh, sorry. I forgot. Did he send you?" "I didn't read anything. I gave him some advice, but that's all the communication we had since the last week." Inko didn't want to misuse the phrase, but she knew her kid and hoped he would stay away from some reasonable topics. "Great, I hope he didn't write anything." Stupid. All for One was stopped by the phrase, I apologize in advance if I laugh. Laugh? Returning to the UAE, Izuku stood in front of the microphone, knowing every phrase by heart and without needing his paper sheet. He took a final breath and began as Sensei instructed. Do not go too quickly, use the silence to grave the words in their minds. As the representative of the students of UAE, I would like to thank each pro hero present today to watch and examine us. Perfect. He had captured the interest of the heroes in particular as well as that of the majority of the audience. I was given the occasion to speak before the beginning of the main event, so I would like to point out a few things. Despite how present Mike kept referring to Class 1A as the elite of the school, we aren't. Izuku was moving a little away from his text, but not by much. While you will be watching today, do not only pay attention to R's quirks but to the students themselves. A quirk doesn't necessarily define the user, and I'm sure that most of the students will follow me on this point. We are all here to give our best today and prove that we can become the heroes that this society deserves. Izuku sensed that there was a lot of laughter coming from somewhere. Izuku bowed briefly and said, Thank you for your attention. I wish good luck to all the participants, he said before turning to leave the tribune. Surprisingly, at first, there was no applause or reaction from the public. Instead, the first indication he got came from the kids, who began cheering and applauding one by one, followed by the audience. Yeah, that's what we are talking about, exclaimed a figure invisible to him. On his left, there was an overly happy girl who added, Take that in your face, suckers. Finally someone had the guts to say it, more. He could see delight and smiles almost wherever he looked, but he also realized that some individuals didn't enjoy his brief speech at all. Izuku, you were amazing, Ochako exclaimed. Yeah man? That was so manly, you know? I guess you really deserved your place as the student's representative. Thank you guys, really tried my best here, Izuku said, scratching his neck. The home of Midoriya. Ha 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 ha. The neighbor might call the police if All for One weren't holding back. Instead of being alarmed by the man's response, Inko was pleased to find that Izuku had broken the tendency of muttering and skipping words when he spoke. My baby, I'm so proud. That's what I wanted to see. Here FFS All for One. Off to a great start. Returning to the UA for the remainder of the chapter, hopefully. Izuku observed Midnight glance to the audience and say, alright, she was either genuinely bewildered or in trouble. Let's just get to the first event, right, Mike? Nothing for a while. Oh, yes, let's go. Are you readddyy? You fool. We haven't explained what's going to happen yet. Damn it, just do it yourself then. On her right, a large screen appeared, showing what appeared to be a map. Oh, sorry about this. Anyway, it's simple. The first event is a race. You guys just have to follow the track and finish in a good position. You can use your quirk as much as you want, as long as you do not voluntarily or involuntarily hurt another contestant. Got it? Oh, be careful, we also put a bunch of traps along the way. You didn't really think we would just let you have a nice morning run, right? Izuku glanced at Ochako, who followed suit, and they both nodded. Everything is going well so far. Good. Now start. Ochako was about to run, but Izuku stopped her. All of the students turned back toward the large tunnel that led to the start of the race without waiting. Wait, it's too dangerous to just go through it. Oh yes, so what do we do? Well, Midnight did say we had to follow the circuit around the stadium, but she never said what we couldn't do to follow it. How far can you go with your quirk? It depends. I mean, how far up? Ochako peered over her and said, Oh. It would work, but it was going to be a great fall. Sure, I can do that. Just don't let go, alright? That's probably the last thing I want to do. So, where should I? Izuku merely took Ochako's hand as she offered it, saying, just grab my hand. They had already wasted enough time. Ochako used her quirk to launch them into the air when Izuku was ready, choosing a favorable angle. As they were in the air, she questioned, what next? They were on the verge of collapsing. Alright, I'm deactivating my quirk, and then, Ochako looked at Izuku and flushed. What next? Well, we run. They noticed two entrance exam 0-pointers obstructing the other students' path as they crossed the top of the stadium, and shortly after, one of them became totally trapped in a huge iceberg. Wait. Izuku cried in despair, nearly letting go of Ochako, who had just let go of her arm. As they fell freely, she exclaimed, What do I do? What do I do? Directly above the two giants. Izuku hardly had time to consider, and the robots appeared to be descending rather than particularly hostile. A platform on which to move. He commanded, on my mark, activate your quirk again. Yes. With Izuku remaining silent, they were rapidly approaching from the robot. Izuku, wait. Nothing has changed. Izuku wait. Right away. Izuku positioned himself directly beneath Ochako as she activated her quirk, and they continued to fall rapidly. Izuku landed on the robot's head, or rather, slid along it. He could have stopped the fall, but he could have slowed it down. Who knew that playing some old video games that Sensei recommended would help? Izuku put a lot of weight on his legs, and having Ochako above him didn't help, but he was able to land behind the robot with Ochako. Izuku, that was great. How are you doing? Naturally, Ochako saw that his legs were trembling. He glanced farther away and said, it's fine, just exhausted a bit. Then he recalled the construction engines he had seen the other day, and it made sense a canyon had been constructed, to delay the competitor who had gotten past the robots. He turned to Ochako and said, crap, we still have a long way to go. I'm going to give us a lift, can you get on my back? Why your back? Buddha? Ochako utilized her peculiarity to aid Izuku, even though she didn't want to because he was the one who asked for it and Izuku was harmed. All right, let's leave. Izuku ran, and although he didn't appear injured, he was actually walking on his toes with every step, but he halted as soon as he got to the man-made canyon. How about we jump together, on your mark? Ochako used her quirk on Izuku, who took a few steps back and leapt into the air. The two of them floated above the entire area, even passing Shoto, who had appeared to be leading the race from the start. Yes, we are capable. Ochako raised her fists in the air and cheered. Ochako let go of her quirk as they touched down on the opposite side of the canyon. Would you like me, Toa? No, not quite yet. We're not sure if we should anticipate another trap. With two robots and numerous holes in the center of the race, it's obvious that we must. It appears somewhat lighter, Tana. Izuku had no time to look down as something erupted behind him as he began brainstorming. He felt something beneath his feet that wasn't dirt. Was it metal? Izuku lost his footing and rolled farther away when he felt Ochako leaving his back. He looked over his shoulder as he stood up, and Izuku realized that they had just stepped into a minefield. Ochako. He had to call Izuku to see how she was doing. Come on over here. They were separated by the entire circuit. Ochako appeared uninjured, while Izuku was still recuperating. To halt the people moving forward, a minefield, Izuku tried to follow Ochako, but he halted when he saw all the little mounds that plainly marked the locations of each mine. We have to, he explained. Continue without me. Ochako yelled, I'll finish on my own. You deserve to be in first position. However, what if Izuku, just do it, I'll be all right. Ochako was correct. He had a chance to finish the race ahead of Shoto or anybody else, but Izuku didn't want to do this because it meant forgetting the main goal, which was to team up and win the first event. Good luck. After shouting back at last, he dashed through the minefield. Now that he understood where he stood, it wasn't too difficult, but his movements were rather limited, making it easy for many kids, like Shoto or Katsuki, to go by him with their peculiarities. Deku. Izuku lost his footing and stumbled on another mine just as he was about to turn around when he was shoved away. He was standing back on his legs when Shoto suddenly emerged, sliding over a wave of ice. Katsuki stood in front of him. Why did he have to think about this? A swarm of competitors was rapidly approaching, and Izuku glanced over his shoulder to see that he was moving far too slowly. If only he had a quirk, too. A peculiarity. He also had a metal plate and numerous mines. Since this is essentially the same as it is in the anime, I will keep this section very simple. Izuku only needed a few seconds to stack roughly 10 mines in one location because the most recent explosion had exposed many of them. Either he would look like a genius or he would regret his choice. He positioned his plate over the mines and stepped on it. Boom. Izuku set off a tremendous explosion just as the other competitors were about to approach him, obstructing the wave of kids behind him and driving him closer to Shoto and Katsuki. It wasn't enough, though, because he was losing all of his speed as he fell and would soon find himself in the same predicament, and no, that's unacceptable. Another explosion was set off when he slammed his metal plate against the ground and planted both of his feet on their shoulders. Despite being in the lead, Izuku dared not glance back. He continued racing till he reached the other tunnel that led to the stadium. At this moment, this man is the first person back in the stadium. Izuku Midoriya, Mike, the presenter, shouted his name over the speakers. Under the applause of the pro-heroes and citizens, Izuku lost his focus on his balance and fell to the turf. The home of Midoriya, the little desk in the living room, had been smashed by All for One, and Inko was sobbing uncontrollably. She managed to utter the words, my baby one," in between sobbing. "Ha ha 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 ha, yes. Indeed. Show them your strength and who is in charge here." Izuku would likely be terrified to learn later this evening that either Sensei or his Mothera or even Botha have totally demolished the majority of his house if he were aware of what was going on over here. Returning to the UA, even though Izuku was crying in real time on TV, he still claimed this win since he couldn't believe he had made it. He got up to see the results of the first event, the obstacle race, on the same screen that had shown the circuit at the start of the care. The majority of his class attended the second event, with him taking first place, Shoto coming in second, and Katsuki in third. Izuku, once more, he was unable to respond before Ochako leapt on his back. "Oh Ochako, quote, you succeeded, you're in first place." Izuku laughed and gestured to the large screen. "I believe I'm in the 22nd or 21st place. Congratulations, you were 7th, quote." It had been really tight, and Ochako blushed. She genuinely believed that she would be in a decent place even if the minefield ended up slowing her down, but 7th. That's absurd. Another location at UA. Nedzu was grinning, and he and the other teachers had a designated area to watch the festival. He would lie if he claimed it was a fun show, as the majority of his co-workers disapproved of him allowing a strange speaker to open the event. The fact that this kid, Izuku Midoriya, was quirkless was already surprising to most, and now the same quirkless had won the first even, directly in front of the son of the number 2 hero. "You're not serious. Since when has this school permitted a—" "What I mean is, why, are you insane? Quote, how did he pass the test at all? He is too feeble to even carry a table, and he cheated someplace. Quote, I'm shocked by UA become a quirkless social hub, which is really unfortunate." Since the festival began, he had been inundated with such remarks, and he was far from finished. The only one who appeared pleased by Izuku's victory was Toshinori. "All right, have no regrets?" the principal was asked. "I must confess that I do have some. He did a fantastic job, but I'm curious about how he'll handle the next event, which hasn't been chosen yet, correct?" Quote, "No, but it will in a few minutes. We'll give them a bit to catch their breath here. Earlier, I saw Endeavor. Are you aware of his current situation?" Quote, "I'm pretty certain he isn't in the mood right now, as we haven't spoken in years. He isn't particularly quirkless and tolerant. I understand, but make sure to talk a bit since you are both in the same place at the same time for once." "I'll try, but I can't guarantee anything, and you? Is there a problem?" Quote, Nezu chuckled, saying, "I'm hungry, do you need anything?" I truly hope he makes it to the final. Some people should stop talking for once. Quote, "I'm fine thank you." The principal got up and walked out of the area. Toshinori looked at Izuku for a while and noticed that Ochako and a few other kids from all the classrooms, not just 1A, were applauding and congratulating him. He couldn't explain why, but it made him think of someone in particular. Back in the stadium, Izuku didn't think he would suddenly become a significant figure if he won. Instead, he felt like a movie star. The majority of the students, including those he didn't know, were complimenting him for his speech rather than his performance during the race, which touched his heart even though it might have had an impact on their response. He had little time to respond or offer an answer because Midnight had already returned to make an announcement. "Good, if I may say so, it appears that the majority of you have recovered from this appetizer. Unfortunately, since they will no longer be competing, I must ask every student who did not place at least in the top 42 to leave the stadium. Let's choose the next event now." A wheel of fortune appeared on the screen, and it began to spin. It seemed to go on for a while, so long that even Midnight tried to add something to keep everyone awake. "I really wonder what's going to be the next event," she said, implying that she already knew despite the entire scene. After a minute, it stopped. "Battle of Cavalry. I see that some of you are giving me some confused glance. Don't worry, I'm about to explain everything," Midnight said. She pulled out a remote control, and a cartoonish picture of All Might standing over a number of other professional heroes appeared on the screen. With discretion, Midnight pulled out a little notebook and wrote, "In the second event, competitors must form teams of no more than 4 individuals and then form a horse configuration. In order to get points, players must swipe the headbands of opposing teams while defending their own. The total of the points earned by each team member depending on their performance in the prior competition will determine the headband's value. At least it was shrewd. Midnight hit a button once again, and the screen began to show how many points each competitor had earned in the first event. From the bottom to the top of the large screen, each student's point totals from the first event were shown. It can't be. What on earth is this? Quote, is this a joke? Quote. Izuku was largely unable to speak, while the other competitors were in a state of shock. 10 million. Izuku found himself in a fantasy field with green water and gray grass, where birds had wooden beaks, and he was unable to hear what was going on around him. It was 2 years ago. Sensei, you claim to be the embodiment of criminality, correct? Quote. Yes, in opposed to All Might, some used to refer to me in this way. Why? Quote. I pondered whether it was similar to the hero system in that Endeavor keeps attempting to replace All Might but is never successful. How? I mean, did you experience the same thing? Quote. Sensei chuckled and briefly played with his fingers, saying, well, you see, having more authority than others does not always imply that you are more qualified to rule. Rather, what defines a great ruler is your capacity to maintain that authority. I'm not sure I understand. The reason people followed me was not only because I knew how to wield my power and how to defend it, but also because I knew how to use it for their benefit. I can't dispute that many people attempted to replace me, but they were never successful, either because they lacked drive or because they lacked sufficient power. I understand. How about All Might? Quote. That's simple. How do you feel about Endeavor? Quote. Entriever. He's wacky. Hey, come on, your mom isn't in the room. I hope so, anyway. Quote. He is a jerk. Well, that's a gold summary. I guess you can easily link what I just explained to his case. Because he lacks the ability to be like All Might, he is disliked by everyone and cannot become a symbol of peace. Quote. Simple enough. As well, All for One paused, assessing the extent of his explanations, saying, never mind, everything is stated. Quote. Sometimes, Sensei, I think you're holding me back. I am not. You wouldn't be here if I ever felt the need to give you the easy way. Do you intend to characterize me as a member of the elite? Quote. But my dear student, you are an elite. Okay. 10 million. Izuku already knows the rules. He only needs a strategy to avoid becoming the target of everyone. Great. He has a horrible strategy that Sensei would never accept. He must find a way to avoid becoming the target of everyone's attention. Hey Izuku, is it possible for me to join your group? Quote. Oh Ochako, are you certain? Now, everything is changed. You realize it's going to be difficult. Quote. I understand. However, that is precisely the reason I wish to join your team. It wasn't the reason, either. I need to show them who I am because they hardly noticed me at the first event. Additionally, everyone will be observing you, Soa. All right, I get it. We need to locate Momo as soon as possible before she joins another gang. Izuku had to cut her off, which was impolite, but there wasn't any time to waste. Ochako tried to say something else, maybe an apology, but she knew that helping Izuku was the best course of action right now, so she promptly located Momo and let Izuku know where she was. Momo called Izuku. He saw her approaching Shoto. Thankfully he was already being approached by a lot of students, so Izuku had about 2 minutes to convince her. I need your help. Quote. Izuku, I apologize, but, look, it's 10 million. Izuku was careful not to say, a weapon, aloud, only enough to pique the interest of the one person he wanted. Quote. You must have a plan and require my assistance, is I correct? Quote. Yes, we need a strong defense, so can you find someone? Oh wait, Izuku said, turning to face Ochako. Don't reveal your team affiliation if at all possible. Are you sure you want me to do that? Ochako asked, looking nervous. You might find someone on your own. You are far superior to me based on the number of quirks you possess. Time is precious, Ochako. He once more interrupted. I have a plan to ensure our place in the final. If it works we won't even have to fight, but it is complex, that's why we need this last person and I trust you to make the right choice. Ochako grinned and said, all right, I'll do it. Ochako was already considering someone as she dashed through the throng. Sorry for the delay, I heard the most of what you just stated, so it's okay. What's your plan? Quote. I need your quirk. The home of Midoriya, a cavalry fight, Inko remarked. Sounds like something you would do in the army. She was a little concerned about the $10 million that were actually fastened to her son's head. It is, and I'm interested to see how Izuku will handle this. This event was obviously designed to mimic the heroic system. The system of heroism, but it's only a fight. In what way is it meant to symbolize the system of heroes? Actually, I'm not even positive that we are discussing the same topic. I apologize, I intended to say the heroic ranking. There is a huge gap between second and first place because everyone wants to be at the top, which is why Izuku has 10 million points and everyone will want to take his points. Nobody wants to be in 4th or 17th place since those positions are pointless. My son was made a target by them. Quote, Izuku wanted to win. He should have expected this kind of situation, but I'm almost certain he must have figured out everything by now. The UA, what if they think this is cheating? This is a horrible plan. Concerned, Momo asked. If the other pupils are unable to figure out the trick, it is not my fault. Are you in, then? Izuku disliked the way he smiled, which indicated that he was certain he was correct, and he was. Momo said with a sigh, all right. However, you'll give me one. Izuku turned around and saw Ochako returning with Fumikage. Ha ha ha, you bet, was the right decision. I succeeded in persuading Fumikage, she said, but Izuku had learned to spot deceit from his 5 years with Sensei, and Ochako was. In truth, Fumikage likely struggled to establish a team since most people were unable to see his peculiarity in action. The statement, I heard you had a plan, or maybe he was simply intrigued by Izuku's scheme, seems like a far more casual explanation. As the teachers handed out the headbands, Izuku said, I do. Momo, you know what you have to do. Her response was, all right. In the meantime. That's sadistic, I never liked this one event. Aizawa was awake for once, and although Izuku's performance startled him a little, he was not particularly interested in the race and already knew some of the outcome. How ironic that you are the one making this statement. Didn't you expel an entire class? I apologize for forgetting. You intended to expel at least one student from your class this year, but you didn't. By the way, what made you decide against it? While Midnight was completing the preparation, Hizashi was asked to take some coffee. Some potential. This was unexpected because Shota would often never say anything more than, they weren't completely useless, or something like that. A possibility. Could you repeat this? I'll videotape it this time. This youngster, Midoriya, he turned out to be the best student I have ever had, even though I initially didn't want him in my class because I thought he would be a bother. The oddball child, he has thus far received perfect scores, but it won't help him, he continues Toa. Quirkless, yes, but today he will make the difference, just wait and you will see. Although Hizashi believed he was either dreaming or suffering from a fever, he had actually witnessed more bizarre things in his life, and he even found it amusing to watch his buddy and coworker so intrigued by something. All right, do you have any new fellas? Quote, do you have to scream like that all the time? Aizawa, now irritated, asked. Izuku was wearing the 10 million points headband over his head with pride as he and his crew took their place. You own me one, Izuku. Momo was trembling, how could she not? Although everyone was staring at her, she still feared the worst, a swift loss and total disgrace. Even if we prevail, Izuku laughed. How are you able to believe that? Momo turned to face Izuku, but she couldn't help but notice that his smile seemed strange. To grab Momo's attention, Ochako placed a hand on her shoulder and said, hey. Calm down, we're going to win. The public's attention was drawn to a horrible larceny. You know what happens when you set a microphone too close from a speaker. Yo fellas, let's get ready to RUMB. Get started. Midnight halted present mic once more, and only half of the teams began to move as a result of the confusion. Izuku took off his headband as soon as the event started, and tossed it aside. Izuku's plan has so far been successful, and the other teams appeared to be greatly perplexed. What? Midoriya has just thrown away his 10 million. What is going on? Hearing present mic commentate on the event was different, and it would have been an excellent way to learn more about the state of the world while the event was going on. As Izuku's team came to a halt, Ochako was the first to say, Izuku, why? Quote. Izuku gestured cynically at the headband's worldwide placement and said, well, it was a burden, and honestly, I think the other teams really need some help. Global. Since the headband itself was currently gone in a heap of blood and flesh, the author is clearly referring to the other pupils jumping in on each other to get the prize. But nevertheless, we're in 7th place. Fumikage was added. Hey, as I said earlier, I have a plan. At this point we don't even have to move, we have already won. Want to elaborate? Since Momo was the only other person who knew of Izuku's intention, the bird student glanced toward her at the same moment. Izuku looked mezzo and said, "No, people are listening." Despite his distance, Izuku could sense that his quirk was currently particularly active because of All for One. The home of Midoriya, why would he do that? I don't understand, asked Inko. For the first time, he had to acknowledge that his student had outsmarted him. Quote, "Are you aware of this girl's peculiarity?" Quote, "You mean, Ochako?" Quote, "No, the other one. Oh, Momo. Indeed, Yaoyorozu, I believe Izuku spoke something about creation." When Inko eventually realized that Sensei had not had any tea, she halted. She did not witness him take it off either. "You aren't drinking." Quote, "Well, I am, only if you aren't looking." Trust me, even Izuku had a really hard time to digest what's hiding under. Inko placed her head to the side, not really seeing Sensei's injuries, but if he wanted some peace and quiet to drink, then it was okay. "I'll be right back." Izuku's team did not move at all, and no one attempted to assault them either, yet Sensei played with his finger. How did he do it to guarantee his victory? Yes, this is probably my second least favorite scene in the novel so far. Since I already don't write combat since it's not engaging or useful at this stage, let's skip this and get right to the nice parts. Finish. Present Mike screamed. The event was actually scheduled to take place more than 5 seconds later. Even Midnight was taken aback and had to check several times. Momo looked shocked, Ochako was perplexed and feeling bad, Fumikage was furious, and Izuku was quite proud of himself for 2 reasons. Izuku's crew didn't have to move at all during the event. At first, he saw that Katsuki's team had recovered what was left of the 10 million point headband. As Midnight approached, she motioned for Katsuki to give her the headband, wearing a somewhat disgusted expression on her face and declaring that the headband was useless in that condition. Shoto's squad now led by about 1,000 points, while Katsuki's team was only in second place. When Izuku held up his palm to summon Midnight, the expert sighed and approached him, asking, "What's wrong? Now that we are alone, you should leave." Izuku was holding another headband worth 10 million points. Quote, "What? Quote, what? Everyone, pause for a moment. Something is happening over." Present Mike paused a little to give the cameras time to process the information. "There." Quote, as Thissa, Midnight grabbed the headband out of Izuku's grasp and began to inspect it. "Is that Izuku? How?" Out of delight and bewilderment, Ochako had seized her closest friend's shoulders and was shaking him in every manner imaginable. "Let me clarify. You are aware with how Momo's quirk operates, correct? I basically asked her to create a copy, one that would be obvious. As you can see, I requested her to leave some design elements in case someone were able to find the false one. My approach was straightforward. If I may say so, I gave the headband because we couldn't retain it." But then, Fumikage's normally indifferent and bored look vanished. Midoriya's team managed to conserve the 10 million point headband. Midnight said, lifting the headband into the air. "The first position is taken by them." She turned around just as she said it, and she heard someone talking to her over an earpiece. Izuku appeared dubious, asking, "What's wrong?" When Midnight appeared to be available, he inquired. Quote, She fled because it looked important. Look, wait, there's a problem. For now, just go to the locker room or whatever. Izuku, where exactly did you conceal the headband? Asked Fumikage. Oh simple, just beneath Momo's one. Momo's did remove her original headbands for a little moment, and her head was covered in a large red stain. Momo fled in the same direction as the Midnight, saying, "I really don't want people to see this, I'll just go too." She was ill from the start for no other reason than this. Ochako didn't want her classmate to be seen negatively. No, of course not, she simply thought this scheme would fail. Perhaps she is correct. Why, it was said by Midnight. We've prevailed. She just was called. I guess some folks doesn't find this fair. I apologize for my inaccurate assessment of the majority of the teacher's true mental states. It's unacceptable. Quote, this must be a cheat. We can't look like a bunch of idiots with a little twitch. Quote, as soon as Midnight walked inside Nezu's office, she saw that the principal was surrounded by 10 or so pro-heroes, and not just any pro, all of them had high ranks and Endeavor himself as their leader. Will you please refrain from shouting in my office? I can hear you right in front of me. You moron, stop talking so much. This is your responsibility. Take a look at the media and the internet. They're all asking us questions about this strange garbage. This is your fault again. Exactly what is he doing here? I will see to it that you are exposed as the fraud that you are to Aura. Midnight finally had enough and gave Endeavor a smack that was so quick and forceful that it reverberated across the entire room. Are you done yet? The other professionals who were with him retreated a step because Endeavor had gone too far. If you think he is so weak and unfit for our profession, then how do you explain that your so fantastic son didn't manage to beat him? Nezu was no longer smiling, or at least he wasn't attempting to be pleasant. Quote. Endeavor struck Nezu's desk with his fist. A small obstacle, I'll go get rid of it, he said as he quietly walked out of the office. However, the other professionals remained in anticipation of the principal's response or perhaps a decision to address the matter. In my opinion, Midoriya is significantly more worthy of remaining at UA. I'd be more than happy to welcome them if you wanted to express your rage more than any of the other kids. Locker room. After going through the most trying times, Izuku was finally able to breathe. Ochako advised her to phone her parents, who must be extremely delighted that their daughter had advanced to the final. Izuku considered calling his mother, but it seems that the fallout from the previous incident didn't fully affect him. Izuku avoided Katsuki because the event was over, but he didn't anticipate Shoto saying, "Hey, was he upset? Do you mind if we talk outside?" Quote. It's essentially the same anime scene, so let's jump straight to Izuku's response, shall we? You weren't using your fireside, I noticed. However, if I may say so, I never would have imagined that your family situation was so dysfunctional. To be clear, my father merely caught me earlier and told me to beat you up. I don't need his foolish commands or his foolish idiosyncrasy to beat you, so you may go even farther. As long as I don't use his peculiarity, I don't care if I win the competition. According to Shoto's description, Endeavor was far more akin to a villain than a hero, so his decision to forego using his fireside was warranted. However, Izuku couldn't claim that Shoto was foolish for not using all of his abilities. Quote. Okay, I accept your choice, but you will eventually need to use it. One day, you will encounter something that you cannot overcome without your fire, or your life will be in jeopardy. Because you didn't want to unleash all of your strength, someone might perish one day. Are you attempting to persuade me? If my dada. You are well aware of what I mean. I apologize, but I should leave now. Izuku came to a realization as a result of his talk with Shoto. He, too, decided not to utilize his power well. He didn't choose to, he accepted. However, after giving it some thought, he realized that he couldn't win using just a few hand tricks that Sensei had shown him. It was 2 years ago. How did you feel when you took a quirk for the first time? Izuku waited for Sensei to sigh and lie in his chair before responding in detail, but All for One just replied. Hollow. Sounded more like an angry, I only felt hollow, statement. Izuku saw that Sensei appeared disturbed by anything since he arrived that day. He kept shifting his head position as though he was having problems falling asleep. Is there a problem? Quote, I recently changed my treatment, it isn't working well with some of my quirks, it will pass eventually. Sensei was still waking up every 15 seconds an hour later. When was the last time you slept? Quote, are you looking for a precise response or just an estimate? Although it sounded humorous, Sensei was taking it quite seriously. Exactly. Quote, you might not want to be here, Weena. I'm going to go crazy in 4 days, 7 hours, 37 minutes, and 42 seconds. Hold on, I really need your assistance. Why hadn't I considered this earlier? Quote, yeah, but what can I do? Quote, look, I have a quirk which might help me to sleep for a while, so I need you to take it in. No. No. Quote, I am unable to. I simply cannot. Izuku, normally I wouldn't force you, but right now I'm pleading with you to stop. It will only take a moment. I'll give it to you, you'll use it, and then you'll return it, okay? Quote, what if I caused you harm? Quote, Sensei held out his hand to Izuku and said, you won't trust me, and even if you do, accidents can happen, I won't be mad at you, I promise. When Izuku felt the quirk moving through his body, he reluctantly got up from his customary location where he was completing some homework. He hardly touched Sensei's hand. Now, what should I do? It appeared as though Izuku's blood was boiling at the tips of his fingers, despite the fact that his hands were as cold as ice. I'll be asleep in a second if you put both of your hands anywhere on my body. Oh, remember to shut the door behind you. After taking Sensei's hand and following his instructions, Sensei suddenly went limp, and Izuku thought he might have done something incorrectly because he could no longer hear his breathing. Now he had to return the quirk. I only felt hollow. As Sensei's voice reverberated in Izuku's head, he abruptly stopped performing whatever he was doing at the time. He was concentrating, but he knew he shouldn't, and he knew it wouldn't be a wise choice at the same moment he began to consider. Izuku didn't feel empty. Instead, he felt very sick and hungry, though nothing was able to sat his hunger at the moment. For a brief minute, he worried that he might make a mistake because Sensei often mentioned how much he wanted more quirk because of All for One. He grabbed Sensei's hand and pushed back the quirk, but Izuku wasn't feeling hungry for more. He wanted to give it back, to get rid of this quirk as quickly as possible. The quirk slowed, for some reason, and then it seemed as though he was returning to Izuku with other peculiarities in tow. Izuku was now having a hard time releasing go. He was so scared that he pulled his entire body and pushed with his legs to get free. The last time Izuku lost control of All for One was at least a year and a half ago, and he fell with his right hand burning and red sparks dancing about his fingers. Now, after reconsidering his alternatives, Izuku came to the conclusion that he wasn't in the same frame of mind at the USJ. He had to defend his allies at the time, but even after the USJ, he maintained his composure. Izuku could comprehend any peculiarity, but All for One was unique. Everything altered when it was included in the equation. If we are merely a collection of atoms with consciousness, what is holding everything together? It's similar to thinking about how a body functions, with the brain connected to our organs, but how are we alive? All for One enables the user to easily remove all of this genetic engineering for himself without any issues for his own body, even though quirks were comparable while being unique evolutions. Izuku exhaled. He didn't need to consider this. Winning the festival and keeping his word were the only things that mattered at this point. Mom and Dad's residence. Oh, I think I can make something for us both, even if I didn't plan to have lunch. When a phone rang, All for One initially thought it was Inko's, but then he felt the faint vibrations coming from his pocket, so he pulled out his phone and assumed it was Izuku. No, don't worry Inko, normally I do not eat myself, I have other means to eat also, yeah. Quote. Hey, we discussed emergency circumstances mainly, Buddha. Sensei was already getting ready and knew what was going to happen when he was interrupted, saying, you need my help. Go outside, you know where to find me, plus you have a lot of time ahead of you, you might want to take a break. Even though Inko was in the kitchen, she could still clearly hear All for One. She soon realized that it was Izuku calling and that he needed his assistance. I have to go, All for One said as he hung up and headed to the kitchen. I know where you're going, Izuku called, Inko moaned. I never gave him advice on whether or not to use his peculiarity. I have been passive for most of the time I spent with him and I feel like he got more open to you than me so. Quote. Inko just remember to give him powerful quirks. I'd like to watch my son beat the living daylights out of them. All for One was taken aback by Inko's unexpected outburst of confidence. And was also amused beneath his helmet. Of course I will, usually well no, I never spoiled him but I guess this time he deserves it. After years of waiting, Sensei finally asked Izuku for some oddities. Izuku groaned and hung up. Are you heading somewhere? When Izuku dropped his phone on the floor, Ochako startled him, saying, ah. The other wanted to eat with you. I apologize. Quote. The phone appeared to be somewhat resistive to the statement, and no, it's fine. Well, I apologize, it's a little late now, and I'll just tell the others that I'm not feeling well and skip lunch. Why should I tell lies? You mentioned that you had to leave. Ochako didn't appear suspicious, but she sounded suspicious. Izuku bit his lips firmly and made the worst possible excuse. I don't want to make Katsuki think that I'm taking drugs or well you know haha. Ochako appeared perplexed, saying, sure, well, see you later, she said, turning back, presumably to keep herself from giving into the situation's increasing cringe. Ochako was on her way to the lunch area when she ran into Katsuki, who rushed over and shoved her against the wall. Hey, what in heck is this? Ochako knew that something negative was about to happen as soon as she laid eyes on him. It's all your fault, You bitch. You're supporting this weird nonsense only to make me look bad, aren't you? Die. Quote. Ochako felt as though Katsuki had already planned an explosion, so she lifted her leg and kicked as forcefully as she could in a precise spot. When Katsuki retreated, Ochako took advantage of the momentum to flee. This man was even worse than Izuku had described. In addition to being vicious, he was also hateful and a megalomaniac. How did he enter the UA? As soon as she arrived at the lunch area designated for the competitors who advanced to the final, Momo got up from her table and went to investigate Ochako's terrified expression. Ochako, what's happening? You look extremely pale. When the room door slammed open, Katsuki was there. He had already supported the suffering, and it didn't appear that he was just going to make things up. Momo placed Ochako behind her defensively, as if she had figured out what would have happened as soon as Katsuki entered, and she didn't need any type of response from Ochako. Katsuki's hands were glistening as he walked up to Fumikage, who was standing by Momo. Shoto also said, "Get out of my way." Quote. Hiroshima approached his comrade cautiously and said, "Man, I think you should calm down." Now. Katsuki was a burnhead, but he wasn't stupid. Ochako was protected by 4 students, and it seemed that the other people in the room wouldn't mind supporting them if needed. He was particularly annoyed by a certain purple-haired boy who kept staring at him. He scoffed and walked out, saying that everyone in this foolish room was annoying. Momo returned with Ochako after he left, asking, "What happened? Did he cause you any harm?" Quote. He was on the verge of doing so. Thank to everybody. No issue, Shoto suggested. This is just wrong, we should call a teacher. Ochako got a lot of perplexed looks when he said, "No, it's fine, if we call a teacher now it will only cause more problems. He cannot be allowed to wander about like that. Why even did he attack you?" In an attempt to uncover the truth, Momo asked. He and Izuku have a story together, although I'm not sure what it is. I believe Katsuki wasn't particularly kind to him, most likely because he doesn't have any peculiarities. I know this kind of person. They have the perfect flashy quirk for a hero and they act like the worst person in the world with people who didn't have a good shot at the quirk lottery, concluded the purple-haired lad at the other end of the room. Ochako and the others both said, "Why yeah. My name is Hitoshi Shinso, and I would have neutralized him with my quirk if he had continued. If he dares to return, I won't hesitate because I detest bullies. I believe we can enjoy the remainder of our break without having to do that. By the way, it's good to meet you." Ochako bowed slightly, and Hitoshi followed suit. "Just asking, is Midoriya coming back? I would like to thank him for what he said and did during the events this morning. It was really nice for all of us in general education. He left the school, he wasn't feeling well, he might come back right at the beginning of the last event. The park wasn't that near to UA, so Izuku ran as fast as he could, as well as not wanting to take up Sensei's time. As usual, the park was deserted when he arrived, save for Sensei, who was seated in his normal location. It was hilarious to ask, "You came here quickly, are you in a rush?" Prior to the UA exam, Izuku recalled asking him if he was running late, and now Sensei was the one informing him that he had arrived earlier than anticipated. "I managed to grab the first tram and, wait, actually, how did you get here first? You weren't waiting here since your mother invited me to see the sport festival, I was right next." Izuku sighed as he envisioned All for One and his mother sipping a good cup of tea together in front of the television. I think I'm ready," he said. While Sensei wasn't specifically trying to get anywhere, Izuku raised an eyebrow and said, "No, correction, you aren't ready, you were ready long ago but yet you refused to use this power. Your own anxiety kept holding you back, today you need this power, it is different. We don't have much time so I'll keep it simple, I'm proud of you, now win this would you?" Sensei extended his hand to Izuku. "Let's do this," the teenager grinned. Izuku returned to the UA. He felt fantastic, perhaps too great, far earlier than he had anticipated. As promised, Sensei returned all of Izuku's peculiarities that he had owned during the USJ attack. Though Izuku had never witnessed this aspect of him, Sensei loved to experiment, mostly by combining his eccentricities and seeing the outcome. In fact, Izuku was shocked that he didn't covertly attempt to impart anything else. Izuku had absolutely no time to work out, but he could still have 10 minutes or so to grab a snack before the third event begins. He noticed something really intriguing while he was sprinting through the corridors. You did what? Shoto's voice was instantly recognizable to him. He clearly but unhappily recognized Endeavor's voice and, regardless how interesting their talk was, he would have rather not to have heard it. I rigged the bracket so you can annihilate this quirkless trash. The teachers helped me, they are on my side, he said. Shoto firmly responded, no, you are lying, and even if it's true I won't be part of any of your schemes. After a brief period of stillness, Endeavor said, you will. No, what kind of game are you playing at? Obviously not yours and never any. Izuku heard Endeavor fracture ice and activate his quirk. Then there was nothing but silence. He glanced over and saw that Shoto was gone, but the entire hallway was covered in ice. Endeavor had hit his fist to the floor, and he was panting. Fatigue. Maybe because of the ice. Shoto didn't only have a horrible father. Endeavor's striking resemblance to Katsuki in appearance and behavior was enough for Izuku to surmise what Shoto had truly endured. Endeavor ensured that Izuku would face Shoto in the opening round, then. Shoto didn't sound like he would even attempt to win. He would stay out of any crisis involving his father. Shoto was hurting himself, but Izuku was unable to see this as a positive thing. In order to get some rest, Izuku tried to block out what he had heard for the next hour. When he arrived to the lunch area, he discovered Ochako and Momo sitting on a bench. It was obvious that she wasn't feeling well. He called, Ochako. Momo got up and walked directly for Izuku, saying, wait a shay, she isn't feeling well. Tell a lie, she is upset and not feeling well. Ochako had an incident, and Momo was attempting to shield Izuku from the reality. What happened? She said. Momo was doing her hardest to keep everyone calm when she said, Izuku, it's not. Immediately behind Momo, Ochako smiled as like nothing had occurred. I just felt sick for a moment but it's fine now. The food had a weird taste. I should probably point this out to Lunch Rush or ask him if that's supposed to happen, she said. It's nothing, Izuku. Are you sure? Ochako, if something happened I want to know. Momo attempted to follow Ochako, but Izuku held her before she could do so. I'm fine, Izuku. You should grab something to eat. The next event is about to start. We should go now. I don't want to be late, Izuku said. What happened? Was more of a directive than a question. Katsuki tried to hurt her because she helped you during the events this morning. He has passed away. Because Katsuki posed a threat, Izuku didn't eat and continued to walk in circles, unsure of what to do. He should have been present to safeguard Ochako, but instead he left the school for approximately 20 minutes, leaving her alone, and it happened likely the last thing he anticipated that he let his guard down. Ironically, Ochako's first bout was against Katsuki, and the bracket had been shown to everyone. It will soon be her turn. Momo advised Izuku to avoid Katsuki at all costs because he would only make matters worse if he reacted. He isn't worthless. If he so desired, he might destroy Katsuki in an instant and. What was the reason behind his thoughts? Izuku shook his head and left the locker room, nearly running into Ochako on the way out. Why was she there? She was meant to go battle Katsuki. Sorry, she said in apology. It's fine, but what are you doing here? It's going to be your turn soon. I know, let's walk to the arena then. I was looking for you. I knew that Momo would told you or that you would learn soon enough. I'm going to kill him. You aren't serious, right? Ochako halted. What if I am? He went too far. He is dangerous. For 10 years I have been the one to experience what he could do. If he tries to find another victim I won't hesitate, even if this is bad someone has to put an end to this. Izuku, don't say that. It's not you. Ochako, if he had hurted you for real, even slightly I don't know what I would have done then. You feel responsible. Yes. Ochako reddened, saying, Izuku No, I shouldn't have said that. Please forgive me, just go. And Izuku attempted to flee, but Ochako caught him instead, and then hugged him. I'm fine. Izuku tentatively gave her a hug in return, unsure of how to proceed at this point. Wish me good luck, she said before departing. Hold on. Katsuki doesn't care about your quirk. He will just try to attack you without defending, so use this as your advantage, Ochako said as he turned around one more time. Ochako gave Izuku a thumbs up and grinned. Ochako entered the combat zone because she didn't want to experience this. Katsuki was standing in front of her, and she could see that he was eager since his left hand was twitching. She actually wanted to beg Izuku for aid, but she was too proud at the time and now regretted her choice. She turned to wave to her friends, and Momo and the other girls were applauding. It appeared that everyone in Wana now knew what had happened. Ochako saw Izuku, who was standing in one of the access ways behind her. Although he wasn't allowed there, his presence was helpful to her, as it was likely what she needed most right now. Ochako was performing well. Izuku avoided the crowd and his peers, and the fight appeared to be evenly matched thus far. Naturally, Katsuki was more aggressive and vicious than normal. He only wanted to beat the living daylights out of Ochako, not even attempting to eject her from the fighting area. Ochako was quite skilled. She didn't miss any debris during the entire fight, allowing Katsuki to attack on purpose despite the fact that she was hurting and wearing herself out in the process. Izuku appeared to be the only one who saw the debris above the stadium. It was a horrible situation, and Ochako thought Katsuki was only doing it for himself. He wasn't aiming to win as quickly as possible, instead, he just wanted to torture her for as long as possible. "I'm going to smash you into pieces, so please get closer." She feared his smile, this savage smile, perhaps even more than Katsuki did. However, she was prepared, so she clasped her hands together and let go. At the same moment, she had the dumb notion to attack Katsuki now rather than wait. She would undoubtedly be hurt, but Katsuki would never be able to protect himself from her and a shower of stones. Katsuki was taken aback as she lunged for him, and he raised his palm above him to cause an explosion and scatter the stone rain. Ochako was able to push her hand on his torso, and her quirk now afflicted him. She continued by grabbing Katsuki's suit to pull him closer to her. At this point, he was unable to use his quirk without hurting himself, so she attacked by grabbing him by the throat with her free hand and slamming his body into the ground. Ochako grabbed Katsuki once more and threw him away from the combat area as the crowd screamed with delight. Just as she was ready to release her quirk, Katsuki set off another explosion. He was unable to control his trajectory, but it was enough to send him fully out of bounds. She made a mistake by attacking Ochako too far away. Maybe she would have triumphed if she had thrown him away first. "You bitch, you will be destroyed by me." Katsuki was embarrassed and vowed not to let this happen again. Ochako was paralyzed by dread and was unable to move. Katsuki suddenly set off another explosion and was standing directly in front of her, about to punch her in the face. When she hit the ground, Katsuki grabbed her again and punched Ochako in the face once again, and he did it repeatedly until her quirk had no impact left and she had lost all focus. Ochako sought to locate Midnight or Cementos, but her eyesight became cloudy. What was going on, or were they just staring? Izuku was appalled because Midnight and Cementos weren't even attempting to stop Katsuki, and Ochako didn't deserve that. "Look, now WHO is the boss." As he continued to enjoy the girl's suffering, he shouted. Izuku used all of his current quirks, including shock absorption, strength enhancement, and speed enhancement, to kill him. The roles were reversed, and Katsuki hardly felt his head being gripped, slammed, and pushed against the ground. He attempted to activate his quirk, but nothing happened. It didn't even take a second. "Stop, Cementos have a purpose," Midnight yelled. The pro-hero wasted little time. In a split second, Katsuki and Izuku were both trapped in a cement tsunami. Katsuki appeared unconscious and his face was a wreck as Midnight hurried near them. "Are you crazy?" he exclaimed. "You are not qualified." "Oh, am I?" You didn't have to step in when she was being savagely beaten by Katsuki, yet it only took 5 seconds to stop me from defending Ochako. Izuku interrupted Midnight on the same occasion and yelled back in rage. Snarling, Midnight said, "Cementos, bring him out. Forward to the infirmary right now." Quote. "What's going on, Inko?" Present Mike paused his speech as if something significant had occurred. For the previous 30 minutes, he had only paused for the commercial. "Izuku, he." Inko struggled to find the strength to speak out loud since she was so shocked by what had just transpired. "What? If you need more time, take it, but let me know." Inko could hear all for one breathing through his mask as he stood up. They disqualified him. ... They did what? All for one slammed a chair on the floor and damaged a wall out of rage, but Inko didn't care because she would have done the same if she was as physically strong as him. Cementos was dragging Izuku away, but they eventually stopped when they left the area of the school that had been set up for the celebration. "The principal will hear about this." "No, in fact he probably already saw everything. For now don't you dare come back, if you do I'm arresting you myself." Cement workers returned to the stadium after the cement surrounding Izuku fell. Izuku was completely taken aback. Katsuki was the only one to blame. He did not take any action. There is nothing heroic about this man. He ought to quit his eccentricity and... His right hand was closed. Ochako, how about her? She's had to be at the hospital right now. Izuku took the opposite route. Ochako was most likely already at the infirmary when he arrived. He didn't knock on the door when he got there. Instead, Recovery Girl was waiting for him and appeared irritated. It isn't severe, thanks to you. If you didn't stop him then it would have been worse, or even irreparable. Ochako was lying in bed with her face mostly covered in bandages. Izuku bowed in relief and said, "Thank you for taking care of her." Recovery Girl responded by staring at Ochako and said, "Sometimes it's hard to keep a straight face in front of my patients. I'm a healer, and what's terrible with this job is that I can't heal everything. Eventually it's already too late because a hero couldn't make it in time. I was watching from here. When I saw the other contestants grabbing her with such anger I knew it was about to be terrible." Izuku was staring at her. "Don't listen to them. You did what was right. They are the idiots. They didn't have the right to disqualify you." Izuku realized now that he was, in fact, disqualified. He was about to cry for a second, but he forced the emotion away with another thought, and a single tear trickled down his cheek. The rest didn't matter. At least Ochako was alright. "Where is? I won't accept him. They are keeping him somewhere else. I may have accepted every stupid medical treaty but important still open-minded enough to make the difference between someone who needs to be healed and someone who deserves to be healed." That clarified the reason Katsuki wasn't present. "I really ruined everything but I guess it was worth the cost. I don't think I would have been able to forgive myself if she got hurt." "You expected this to happen, didn't you? He attacked her before the event. When I learned that she would be against him I knew Katsuki would use this opposite to hurt her." "Did he now? But why didn't she come and told one of the teachers? When the infirmary door opened, I said, Shoto. She probably wanted to prove that she was strong and..." The teenager sat next to Izuku and said, "I gave up." "Why? You could have continued and probably win the festival." "What would be the point? I decided to boycott this festival, kind of. You were right to defend Ochako. Midnight and Cementos wouldn't move and Katsuki might have enjoyed this for a whole minute before anyone tries to stop him." Shoto pulled out his phone, checked a number of social media sites, and was already in the thick of things by. He meant Endeavor, who was being bombarded with questions from reporters. He grinned, having never seen the old bastard so furious. "I heard your conversation with your Endeavor. I mean, did you really intend to simply let me win?" "Of course, if you were to fight me in a legitimate way I would give everything I have, but if the competition is rigged there is no point." Izuku and Shoto laughed. "But don't you think in not curious, I really want to see what you can do one day." "Alright, let's do this someday." Izuku scratched his head. "You know, I just went out to speak with a friend before the last event. He gave me some help but now I feel like everything I have achieved today has been useless. Maybe, I'm going back with the others. You want to join me?" "No, I will stay with Ochako. Have fun. I guess." "If only. See you later," Shoto said as he walked out of the hospital. "Drink up, it will help," said the recovery girl, who had returned from the other infirmary room holding a glass of water. Izuku reached for the glass and began to sip, but he stopped as soon as he realized that what he had initially thought was water tasted acidic. What is that?" he said, perplexed by recovery girl's effort to poison him. "Vitamins. Depression is probably the worst thing which can happen to a young man like you." "I'm not depressed. And what's the link with vitamins? How is that supposed to help?" "Depends if you believe or not that it does help. She won't be waking up yet, and I do not think that she would appreciate to learn immediately what happened once she does. Just go on a walk or go find something to eat." "Are you throwing me out?" "Yes," the elderly woman said, gazing at Izuku while holding her can in her palm like a stress-relieving ball. What exactly was happening now? Ultimately, the glass of water most likely included no vitamins. In any case, he had hardly opened the door when he encountered the entire Class 1A. "Surprise!" they exclaimed. "Gee guys, but aren't you supposed to?" If only Momo understood why Shoto actually left the stadium as he was going to battle, she would have said, "We all decided to follow Shoto's example. It's so unfair, so we wanted to prepare a little surprise." And also, Momo looked at Koji, who was holding something covered by someone's uniform. Oh sorry," he said, taking off the uniform to show off a tiny trophy. Tada. It's. Izuku couldn't speak. I made it on my way here with Kyoka assumed control. Let's just say it's a small gift from all of us, well, mostly all of us. Izuku wept. Thank you. Really, thank you. You shouldn't have, that's too good. Honta even used someone else's tape to create a ruban around the little cup, and Izuku surmises that Kirishima used his peculiarity to write his name and the words, for the top of the top in 1A, on it. How is Ocha? Was the group that Tsuyu left? Recovery girl said she was fine, but she needs some rest. I was about to go out and, well, now you are here, so what should I do? Tenya left earlier. Apparently something important happened. Perhaps we should all get back home and rest until tomorrow. It has been a long day and I'm almost sure that if we stay any longer the teachers are going to put the blame on us. What's happening now that most of you left the stadium? Izuku asked, his smile ending. Momo suddenly appeared awkward. Well, with Yushoto and Tenya leaving, the last event had already been very shortened, but if you include me and Fumikage it just keeps getting worse. Can we get straight to the point? A lot of pro heroes left the stadium during the event. I'm not sure why exactly, but for now the teachers are dealing with the medias, and what I'm suggesting is that we should leave the school before we get caught into this mess. Lul, just go. Don't wait for me, I'll stay here, I have some things to finish first. I will be fine, Izuku observed the other pupils whispering to one another. Are you sure you don't want to do things to Ochako while? Mineta smirked as she came out of the group. Normally, one of the females would have looked after Mineta, but this time, Denki chose to handle things himself. Yeah, he nearly fell to the ground, but Mezzo grabbed him in time. Well, have a nice afternoon, Midoriya, Momo bowed. Izuku tried to follow suit since he figured this was a thing with wealthy people and knew her family was extremely wealthy. This was really awkward. After 3 hours, Izuku asked Recovery Girl if he could stay after changing and retrieving his belongings from the locker room. He attempted to explain what Momo had previously told about the entire issue with the pros and how the previous event had turned out to be a complete fiasco. It's not my fault, right? You asked this about 7 times now, you should really breath boy. Everything is fine, and if there was a real problem involving you Nedzu would already be here. And the phone rang. Before Chio picked it up, Izuku and Recovery Girl stared at one another. Recovery Girl's infirmary. Yes. Oh. I apologize, I wanted to call you directly but I didn't have your number. Everything is fine. Yes, nothing severe, your daughter is resting. I gave her enough to be back on her feet tomorrow. Oh, Chio turned to face Izuku and grinned. Yes. I'll tell him. If you need to ask anything, call me again. Yes, I'll make sure that she calls you when she wakes up. Have a good night too, sir. Izuku assumed she was speaking to Ochako's parent. So. Her parents asked if she was okay and if I knew the boy who saved her. Apparently you are a boyfriend. I'm not. And they also asked me to tell the said boyfriend that he had all their respect and gratitude for helping their daughter. They did. You just witnessed the whole conversation. Izuku did see the entire conversation, but he did not hear it. Nevertheless, there was a chance that Nedzu was actually speaking to Recovery Girl and that she was only repeating a pre-written script. He was tired. I should go home now, and he hadn't checked his phone since the event ended, so he pulled it out of his backpack with a trembling hand and discovered that he had missed roughly 17 calls. Oh no, I'm dead, Izuku exclaimed as he left the infirmary. The boy reminded Recovery Girl of a specific blonde boy who had studied at UA, but she forced herself not to laugh. Izuku really got 14 calls from All for One and 3 from his mother that he had missed, but he did get one message requesting him to go to the usual place, which was the park. It was almost 7 p.m. when he arrived at the park, and he tried to phone his mother but she didn't answer. He also noticed Sensei's bench but wasn't there. Izuku Midoriya was Sensei's voice, but Izuku wasn't what it meant. You managed to get disqualified from the last event when you were on a winning streak. I gave you enough power to win without lifting a single finger. You stupidly decided to help a girl knowing it was, as I just said, a stupid idea. You broke by yourself a national event, and a hand touched Izuku's shoulder. I'm probably the proudest man in the world for having such a wonderful student. Izuku glanced around and saw that Sensei was grinning, even if he couldn't see it. You believed that what you were doing was right and you never stopped. You showed everyone you were stronger than them, both in raw strength and mind, and you also managed to put the heroes in serious troubles with the medias. The last part wasn't necessary. Izuku said, glaring at All for One. Izuku and All for One both felt a quirk activate. Izuku didn't have time to react, but Sensei did. He didn't name their attacker but was well aware of their position. I bet you thought I was mad at you. Why would I be? You overcame all my expectations. Let's go home. Your mother is making katsudon, and no, don't worry, she isn't. Using an exploding quirk, All for One diverted the attack and fled using the fog that resulted. He was unable to be seen with Izuku, but he would undoubtedly step in if his copyright got into difficulty. I found you. You piece of shit. You are going to pay for that. Izuku felt another attack coming as he got to his feet, and since he could hardly see, All for One was really helpful in getting him oriented. If he was unsure, it was Katsuki. Regaining his footing, he moved away from him using his speed enhancement abilities. Don't move, so I can burn your quirkless face. Izuku was quirkless, and used his strength augmentation to shove Katsuki back into the smoke, even though he knew that he was not allowed to use quirks to protect himself due to the law. What is wrong with you? Exclaimed Izuku as the dust began to settle. You have to pay for this. Because of you and this round face bitch, the last event got cancelled. First you steal my unique place at UA, then the top of the entrance exam, and now you humiliate me in front of all the pros. I'm going to disfigurement you, and trust me, after that no one will want you to exist. And guess what? It's just like before. You know what I have here? No witness. Izuku laughed, then laughed, knowing that his laugh was incorrect, but he didn't care. Izuku just muttered, me neither, as Katsuki stared at him bewildered. Izuku quickly closed the gap between him and Katsuki. His fist was transformed into a cannonball by the combination of strength enhancement and shock absorption. He wouldn't want to be Katsuki at this moment. After giving it his all, he was surprisingly still conscious. Katsuki appeared unsurprised and attempted to propel his fist with an explosion, but it was ineffective and simply stopped as it hit Izuku's face. Grabbing Katsuki's arm, Izuku repeatedly crushed it against the ground like a whip, enjoying himself in the process. Katsuki was unconscious when he stopped. Izuku felt horrible as he realized what he had done. He had felt unstoppable only a second before because of Katsuki. It wasn't wrong, but he briefly resembled the thing he detested the most. In his right palm, Izuku had a burning feeling. Did he do that without realizing it? Red lights were around it, and All for One was active. Well executed. You could have ended this sooner, but your intention was to kill him, so this is technically justifiable, said All for One, who materialized in front of him and clapped his hands. I didn't mean to go so far. Izuku glanced at All for One before turning back to Katsuki and asking, and how far did you intend to? We should call someone, and I already took care of calling an ambulance. I pretended that he was attacked by a villain, and I also made sure that there was no CCTV around this place. In fact, I did a long time ago. Anyway, you should probably give back your quirks for now. The police could ask question if Katsuki decides to testify about what happened. If I'm quirkless, they can't accuse me. Sorry, I completed. Quote. You can stop now. You aren't going to take his quirk, right? Said All for One as they walked by Izuku. Your hand. Izuku shook his hand as though it would help get rid of it, but Sensei grabbed it, and Izuku felt the peculiarities being transmitted. All for One was still active. Leave him here. I think he has done enough damage here. How about you tell me everything about your day at the festival while we walk? After a day, Izuku Midoriya, after the recent incident during the sport festival, you will be suspended for the next 2 weeks. You won't be attending classes, and there is no need to recover your delay as there is a high probability that you will be switching classes. Izuku wasn't expecting this when he opened the letter. I admit I really hoped you would beat him up during the festival, but I guess it was way more satisfying than being restricted to simply pushing him out of bounds. Why, yeah, I guess. Sensei, what happened in the end? Nobody told me how the festival really ended. I admit even I lost track of the situation. I understood that some contestants weren't present and that half of the fights had been cancelled. At this point Bakugo should have been the winner, but he only fought once, and let's just say that the result of his only fight was unclear. I don't understand. Ochako lost. On second thinking, she didn't. Neither Katsuki nor Ochako had brought her out of boundaries. Izuku abruptly broke up the battle, saying, oh, that's why, I'm in serious trouble. Quote. I could always help, was the entire offer. Help. But how? Well, if you really are in trouble with the school, I could always have a small talk with the director. Yes, I will offer my help to your mother. Sensei said. WWAI wait it's fine. I mean, surely I can do this on my own. Don't worry I won't kill anyone. Tell me Izuku, your father is working overseas right? Yes, and he never called you or your mother since you were young. Yes, that's the perfect cover then. If UA ever ask for a legal representative I can be your. Why you, Sensei Izuku groaned, staring at All for One without saying anything. Why do you have to be so awkward? He asked. All for One didn't need to inquire as to whether this was accurate because he could sense a brief change in Izuku's blood pressure. Awkward. I'm very serious. I do not want to say anything bad about your mother but I'm almost certain she has never participated to a parent-teacher meeting or any kind of similar event. Quote. Fine, you will have to deal with my mother but you can be my phony dad if you want. Much pleased. Around 8 p.m., Izuku and All for One arrived at the house. Inko was not angry or afraid, but she was a little irritated. Nevertheless, Izuku was given a hug for his performance and for being himself. He smelled the katsudon as soon as he walked in, and based on how strong the smell was, her mother had just completed cooking 20 minutes prior, and the table was set for them. They talked about what transpired at the festival and ridiculed various professionals, mainly for their catchphrase or outfit. Naturally, Izuku and All for One avoided talking about Katsuki at all costs. In fact, none of them were aware that Mitsuki had already gotten in touch with Inko after she found out that her kid had been brutally attacked by a villain, and had been rescued by ambulance in the middle of nowhere. The situation was different since Mitsuki was still hurt even though Inko didn't truly care about Katsuki. After all, it was Katsuki's fault. Inko had realized the truth when she saw Izuku returning. He most likely didn't get all this dust on his normal clothing during the sport festival. And then he would scream Excelsior. This man was a true wizard in his time. All for One was interrupted by a knock at the door. After a brief exchange of looks, Izuku made the decision to get up and approach the door. He found a letter on the floor with the UA seal on it and something solid inside, but no one else was around when he opened. One more hologram. Returning to the kitchen, Izuku set the letter in the middle of the table. In an attempt to diffuse the tension, Inko suggested, "You aren't opening it. I mean, we could leave it here and say that we never found it. I just picked it up and whoever dropped it must have been watching." "Well, then open it." Like the first UA letter, Izuku opened this one as well. He attempted to keep it from breaking completely by using some kind of super glue, but the holographic projector inside fell to the table and turned on. In contrast to the earlier one, this one only included the principal's voice speaking and no hologram. Izuku Midoriya, after the recent incident during the sport festival, you will be suspended for the next 2 weeks. You won't be attending classes and there is no need to recover your delay as there is a high probability that you will be switching classes. Izuku wasn't expecting this when he opened the letter. I'm going to murder someone, was the first line of All for One. Wait, it's not finished. Listen, was accurate, the audio was still playing on the projector. I insisted with other members of the staff to give you a fair trial. What I said before isn't really confirmed, but you are definitely suspended at the moment. When it comes to switching classes I can't do anything, the teachers have to decide it together. You will have to go to UA in a week at 7 p.m, we will be holding a disciplinary council. Until I remind you that you do not have the right ROB present at UA, you are not allowed to wear the uniform and not allowed to follow any classes even via the help of another student. As a principal I am restrained, but as a friend if I may say I want to let you know that what you did wasn't wrong from my point of view. This was the end of the message. I'm not expelled, that's a good point, right? Izuku, sweetheart, it's bad, very bad. This isn't going to end up on a good way, and even if you can stay at UA and stay in the hero course this will be on your profile and Inko began to cry, but neither All for One nor Inko responded. No agency will recruit you, the government, the medias, it's like being marked for life, he said after raising his head for a minute. Oh, what should I do? I can't reject the fault on Katsuki. No, it will just make things worse. At this point you can only let things happen, unless you are still minor. A relative from your family has to be present in a way or another during this council. I could help. You just said present, and it's not like you can just step inside UA. I have a tool, as some police officers may say. A tool, the statement, a phone if you prefer. I regret being old, was made by All for One. As they stared at their visitor, Inko was completely bewildered, and Izuku thought of just bringing his mother and acting properly for once. At about the same moment, Nedzu's workplace. They can't do that, Toshinori, in his skeletal form, exclaimed as he stood before Nedzu, absorbed in meditation. But they have all the rights to do so, and they intend to win this trial. The medias didn't go easy on them. Midnight and Cementos are invited to a talk show in a few days. I told them to deny, of course, but they replied well. Midnight replied that, as professional and height-ranked heroes, they prefer how to deal with their image. That's stupid. Even I have a few managers to keep an eye out for this side of the job. What about Aizawa? He will be here soon. I called him. I asked if he wanted to expel the boy on his first day. He didn't even want to let him go during the entrance exam. I just want to be clear with him. If Aizawa is going to be present at the council, then. Sorry I'm late. Something happened near the school and I was called to scout. I had to get information before coming here, Aizawa said as the door opened, still sporting his goggles. What happened? It wasn't a villain attack or else the medias would already be present, speculated Toshinori. A student was attacked. Who? Not Izuku, right? Nedzu asked, looking up at Aizawa. I thought it would be him too, but no, it was Katsuki Bakugo. Katsuki. With amazement, they both exclaimed. All Might asked, is he all right? He was brought to the closest hospital. He is unconscious for now, but he is fine. It could have been worse. Apparently whoever attacked him didn't plan to kill him. If I'm correct, he was ambushed in a park and he tried to defend himself. There is a lot of damage, mostly explosions. He probably used his quirk. Nedzu raised his arms. The medias must not know anything about this. We don't need to start a social war. Make sure Katsuki doesn't yell too much about it when he wakes up. Toshinori, you should call your friend Naomasa. All Might was texting on it already. Anyway, did you find the villain? For some reason, no. Believe it or not, but this one place in the city is a dead angle. No CCTV. No one passing by. Half of the shops are closed and I wonder if the trash are picked up at least once a month. It's not even close from his house. Why would he go here? It just doesn't make sense at this point, and I do not want to spend my nights seeking deeper into this mess. Forget it. What about Midoriya? The others didn't tell you anything. I left at the same time most pros did. I tried to catch some of my students for a severe correction, but they all left before I could do anything. I guess you do not consider that what Midoriya did was. Aizawa collapsed onto the couch as though he had just finished a long day. No, he was right, technically, but my job is to keep my student out of trouble, so if they get caught, I'm the one supposed to make sure that they do not try again. Nedzu forced Aizawa to step up, saying, Izuku might be expelled if you can't convince your colleagues. Quote. Really? After a day, the studios of Sakura TV. The live studio audience erupted in cheers and jeers as the two heroes were introduced, but Flare either didn't notice or didn't care. Good morning world and welcome to everyone's fifth favorite hero talk show. I'm your hostess Flare Dragon, and joining us today are two of the teachers of UA, the most prestigious hero academy in the world, depending on who you ask. Without further ado, let's welcome the 18-plus heroine, Midnight, and the man that any construction company would want, Cementos. However, Midnight and Cementos scowled for a moment before forcing a false smile onto their features. Midnight said, "Thank you so much for having us, Ms. Dragon." The hostess responded, "Please call me Flare. Dragon is much too formal, especially for this. So anyway, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this." She replied. She said to them, "Tell me about the UA Sports Festival." Cementos inquired, "Well, what specifically are you interested in knowing?" Flare asked them, "Well, what are your thoughts on the whole shebang?" "Well, it went by very well for the first two events, but coming down to the end we had a few hiccups during the mini-tournament," replied Midnight. "I know I was a little disappointed too, but I will admit it was nice to see that UA has so many promising young heroes," Flare said. Cementos continued, "Well, we expect nothing less than the best. I mean the quirkless underdog was the talk everywhere. I'll tell you right now, he's definitely gonna be a fan favorite when the time comes," Flare informed them. She saw the abrupt shift in their facial expressions. With a sly smile, she chose to stoke the fire further in order to test the size of her sword. Ah yes, Izuku Midoriya, the boy with no quirk who overcame all odds and made it into UA and then went plus ultra and dominated the sports festival for the most part. I'll tell you right now, there are many people out there right now who are outright inspired by him for overcoming all the odds, and not just the quirkless but also the ones without any flashy quirk. She continued, it was unfortunate though that he got disqualified, but I suppose that is to be expected. Can't have heroes who break the rules running around, so I'll admit, it was necessary that he be disciplined right there for his actions. Her tone lost its welcoming edge as she interrupted the heroes, saying, I'm glad that you agree with I wasn't finished. Izuku Midoriya was able to make it on to the field and interrupt a rather brutal fight between two of its students, Ochako Uraraka and Katsuki Bakugo. Right after he interrupted the fight, he was encases in several pillars of concrete by Mr. Smintos here in less than 10 seconds. Now I know that UA does things a little differently compared to other schools, and the students, especially those in Class 1A, are exceptional individuals, but I went to several professional doctors and they themselves claimed that if Izuku didn't stop the fight, then Ochako Uraraka would have suffered injuries that would have been permanently damaging to her. So tell me, why did neither of you stop the fight before it escalated to that extreme? Why did a young boy have to do it when the pros couldn't? Are you trying to simulate the dangers of hero work by allowing them to suffer the same brutal beatings you all take? Or were you under the impression that her injuries were not so severe? In that case, shouldn't you all be more medically trained so you could assess those situations more accurately? Flare inquired. Everyone's attention was on the two heroes who were having difficulty coming up with a believable answer. Flare was curious to see how they managed to escape this one. She was more conscious than anybody of the power of the media, but she was also cognizant of the fact that heroes may lie, exaggerate, and leave out information in order to preserve their reputation. I have no idea whose professional opinion you got, but I assure that our own medical staff assured us that the damage was not so severe. Truth. Recovery Girl herself was the expert the hostess had spoken with. The cunning Chimera Nezu had reserved the heroes especially so she could test them. Very well, I'll trust that given how top-notch UA is, that the staff can assess and handle those types of injuries. Flare replied. On the next question, what about Katsuki Bakugo? What do you have to say about his actions? She demanded. Unapologetic, Flare responded, I heard that he was attacked by a villain yesterday. It's a real shame, but I suppose it's to be expected. Pardon me, Hook. Our student was attacked by a villain just yesterday. Translation. Sinker added, how can you say something so insensitive? Pardon my rudeness, but that wasn't insensitivity. Flare told them. Your student almost brutalized a young girl who is also a student. Even if you say that it's to help show them just how brutal the world of heroics really is. There are individuals who would think his actions to be more villainous than heroic. Flare responded, why the whole idea of the tournament could be seen as a villainous exercise than a heroic one. Heroes should only use their powers when absolutely necessary and must be held accountable as such for each and every injury. A tournament to demonstrate that should be structured around the idea of only incapacitating the opponent or getting them out of bounds, and should penalize them for every injury they cause their opponent. No doubt he had a firm grasp of his powers as he so clearly demonstrated. The young woman chose a colleague who brought up a video of the fight. That kid was not fighting to throw her out of bounds, he was fighting to hurt her, and you two just stood by and did nothing. She informed them. As she gave them another signal, she said, and you know what? That might very well be the reason he got attacked. The hero killer's image came into view. I'm sure you know who this is, or at the very least have an idea. But for those who don't, this is the hero killer Stain. She stated. Stain is a serial killer who has been targeting heroes who aren't exactly the ideal kind. The ones who he deems are false heroes or pretenders. Some wound up dead, some injured. We've interviewed some of the survivors to try and figure out what his idea on an ideal is. That kid doesn't fit it. She explained to them. On top of that, Stain has developed a following of sorts, so while Stain himself may not have targeted the kid, then maybe someone who follows his ideals did, in which case they decided to teach the kid a lesson, or at least that's my theory. She stated as she returned to her chair. And checkmate. The director instructed them to conclude just as Midnight was about to reply. Flare made her final speech to the audience without even noticing the heroes. She didn't know if Izuku was looking, but she hoped that if he did, the little quote would cheer him up, especially if the information she had gathered from her sources was accurate. One last thing. A wise man once said that the greatest hero stories all start when their legs just move on their own. When saving somebody is just a basic instinct. I think that wise man was right. Flare braced herself for the rage of the heroes next to her when the director signaled that the camera was off. It was what was anticipated. Smintos and Midnight were incensed and frequently disparaged her own job and role. She had already heard it all. Every time, the same tale is told in a different way. The press is getting involved in matters they shouldn't be and are only causing trouble for the heroes. Flare looked bored and asked the heroes, "Are you done?" She was well aware of their presumptions about her, but she didn't give a damn. In any case, she would interfere because heroes do that. You know, a lot of the times heroes often say that the press is just looming for the next biggest scoop. The hostess said, "And I'll admit most of us are. But I'm aiming for something a little bigger than just the next scoop. I'm aiming to ensure that the criminals pay," she stated to them. The heroine informed her, "If you truly care so much, then you should let us do our jobs." Flare just gave a small laugh. "Let me rephrase that. I'm interested in making the white-collared criminals pay," she stated to them. "The criminals who ruin people's lives through legal means. The world who hide amongst the sheep, the demons who look like angels, and the villains who hide behind the mask of heroes." She properly articulates the final sentence. Without warning them, she said, "I'm going to interview the parents of some of the children later." They heard her say, "I'm curious as to what I may hear from them." Smintos hissed and asked, "Are you threatening us?" "Threat? Why would I do that? I need to verify what the parents think of the whole situation so I can ensure the parents of future students whether they apply to UA or not. A lot of people are asking because now they're worried for their own children and whether they should send them to UA or send them elsewhere. Most of them seem to only stay because All Might and Best Jeanist went there and All Might is also teaching, but eventually those parents' faith will wane and then not even All Might will be able to save you." Both Inko and All for One had encouraged Izuku to stay indoors and refrain from watching TV or using any social media. First, it could bring down his morale. Second, he might run into a journalist or someone else who asks too many questions. He was confined to his room at the moment, and when Ochako tried to phone him, he didn't pick up. Nedzu had made it clear that he was not allowed to communicate with his classmates in any way as long as it had to do with the Hero Course's sport festival. Ochako texted because the missed calls didn't help. "A great deal. I heard about what happened at the sport festival. I'm fine thanks to you, are you alright?" No answer. According to Kirishima, Katsuki was attacked yesterday. "That's terrible. When are you coming today? Are you late? Should I tell Aizawa?" No answer. Izuku couldn't figure out how she could still feel sorry for this man. "Aizawa told us why you weren't present today. I'm so sorry. I understand now why you aren't responding, but I'm sure you read everything anyway. We are all with you." Everybody save Katsuki, of course, was unaware of what had happened to him, and Izuku was afraid to question Ochako since, after all, he wasn't supposed to know Katsuki had been attacked. Until she told him, anyway. He was still tempted. He only had a single query. It wouldn't hurt to ask one question, would it? He then typed. After Aizawa told her students about what had happened after the athletic festival, Ochako was glued to her phone, bored, and Izuku wasn't responding. All of her classmates were also in no mood to do anything. She had just received a message from Izuku when her phone suddenly vibrated. "What exactly did Aizawa told you?" he said. She remembered everything and began answering right away. 2 days prior, Izuku hadn't been late since the first day of the year, and Ochako had been waiting for him till Aizawa arrived. He wasn't responding, therefore something wasn't right. "Alright, first, as you can see, I do not have bandages anymore. This doesn't mean I am healed and you can overstep your boundaries a bit more than before. Second, we have the results of the sport festival. Right when it was finished we received offers from various pro heroes." After pulling a remote control from a drawer and pressing a button, a screen with the names of the different pupils in the class and their numbers next to them showed. "These figures indicate how many offers each of you received." Momo held up her hand and said, "Yes. Sensei, I do not understand, what are these offers?" "Oh, well, for the next few weeks you will be getting workplace experiences. After the sport festival, pro heroes and agency owners spot the most talented and offer them a chance to be on the field. If you do not see your name on the board, then do not worry, I have plenty of offers to give you all." Shoto was right behind Katsuki, who had 1437 bids, while he only had 1289. Ochako overheard him muttering something about his father, and he didn't appear to be thrilled. Only Katsuki and Shoto truly emerged from the pot, but even with only 345, Ochako had a lot. However, Aizawa was going to ask for Izuku, who wasn't even on the list, when someone else interrupted her. Uncertain, Denki asked, Sir, are those results proportional to our position in the sport festival? He glared at a few students and said, I admit it's a bit different compared to last year. I shall remind you all that most of you didn't even fight during the last event and contributed to its cancellation. He would have liked to discipline them, but Nedzu wouldn't appreciate it. In fact, you asked this at the right time. I just remembered, he said, remembering to add, I have another announcement to make. For the next week Izuku Midoriya won't be present. Aizawa was already turning off the screen and pulling out several sheets of paper as he finished speaking. What type of teacher would casually inform a complete class that one of their comrades won't be present for the upcoming week? Wait, why? Momo, the class president, demanded to know why, as Izuku was definitely not sought. He is suspended. Today we will be. What? Was yelled by the entire class, causing Aizawa to groan. As if it wasn't obvious, can we get back to our program now? Kirishima objected, saying, Sensei, you can't just tell us Izuku is suspended without giving us an explanation. He interrupted a fight and attacked one of the contestants. Are we done? Evidently nobody would allow him to continue working until he obviously responded with, fine. I'm not giving names, but various teachers started a disciplinary council in order to suspend Izuku and have him moved into general education, so until then he is not allowed to be present and he won't receive any offer either. That's UNF. We aren't here to discuss whether or not it's fair. If you have something to say, go tell the principal. I do not want to be held responsible. Now, it wasn't until his mother called Kirishima later that day to ask him to assist Katsuki in getting over his absence that she found out about him. After sending Izuku the entire explanation, Ochako resumed typing a minute later. I'm sorry, the principal told me I wasn't allowed to communicate with other students to follow what happened during classes. I won't be answering until the council is passed, but you can still text to me. I read everything. Ochako laughed because the final smiling was just too adorable. Great, I'm sure Aizawa-sensei was just trying to look neutral, but that in reality he is supporting you. Perhaps he didn't want to talk about this right now. I don't know how you feel about Katsuki. Honestly, I would say he deserves what happened to him. Izuku grinned a little. He was clearly weak-willed to resist if something was luring him to take pleasure in Katsuki's suffering. He didn't give a damn. Since he wasn't a bad guy by nature, he assumed it was alright. Sensei claims that ghosts exist. Strange. In any case, will he not receive an offer? Furthermore, it's not like Aizawa will offer him anything by the end of the session. Fantastic. If he even stays on the heroic route, he will find himself idle for 2 weeks. Hospital Aryamu. Aizawa had summoned Naomasa the previous evening with the intention of questioning one of All Might's students and inviting the peace symbol to ease the conversation. Toshinori could hear people shouting inside, and he was already waiting in front of the door. He came over from the door and inquired right away, what's happening? Mother-son discussion, about food. In fact, they keep changing subject and putting the blame on the other. Please tell me he isn't ways like this. That's his temper. Any news? All Might sighed. Aizawa was right, the park has been cleaned but at least 5 years prior to this event. However, I do not know if this is linked to our case. It wouldn't make any sense. As the door opened, Naomasa narrowly avoided it. Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. Are you all right? Why, yes, thank you. I am Detective Naomasa. His identification was displayed. I need to speak with your son in order to find who did this to him. Mitsuki left All Might and Naomasa and went downstairs, saying, oh, of course, I'll be right back. I have to find some coffin or else I'm about to have a mental breakdown. Toshinori couldn't tell if the huge bandage covering Katsuki's face was caused by Izuku or the villain, but he was awake and didn't appear weak or fatigued when they entered the room. Good morning, Katsuki. I am Detective Naomasa, and this is Toshinori Yagi. He is a representative for UA. I have a few questions to ask you. Make it quick, was the only response he gave when Katsuki muttered something they couldn't hear. In preparation, Naomasa pulled out a pencil and a notebook, and the detective and All Might sat down in front of Katsuki's bed. Fine, first I would like to know what you were doing in this park at such an hour. Your house is pretty far away from this place. Why do you want to know that? It's not your freaking business. You will have to collaborate with us. We have to find out who attacked you. Katsuki tapped his fist against the hospital bed and shouted back, it was this thing Deku. Deku? Naomasa asked, gazing at Toshinori, who appeared perplexed. All Might turned to glance at Naomasa, wondering if Katsuki was telling the truth, but the investigator was suddenly tapping his pencil on his notebook. Deku M. Oh yes. But it's Midoriya. Naomasa recognized Izuku Midoriya and had been watching the athletic festival with several of his coworkers as though it were a national event, so he watched the occurrence. You were saying that one of your classmates attacked you in the middle of the night. I just told you it was him. Katsuki exclaimed, appearing to be panting. The child appeared to want to say anything else, but anything could enrage him, so Naomasa didn't want to press this inquiry any further. The detective got up and motioned for Toshinori to follow suit. We will stop here, sorry for disturbing you, he said promptly as he left the room. Everyone might have asked impatiently, so, it can't be true, right? In actuality, Naomasa's quirk didn't talk, but over the years, he came up with 4 distinct types of replies. My quirk tells me he is lying clearly, but not everything is false. Convinced, half-truth, lie, truth, and lie. He was unable to determine whether Katsuki was persuaded since, in most cases, emotions can be distinguished even when they are close. It's like drinking water from 2 different sources that tastes nearly the same but differs. So Izuku didn't attack him. Naomasa, I'm supposed to report everything back to Nedzu, what am I going to say? Toshinori nodded and pulled out his phone. Nothing for now. Yes, perhaps I should go and interrogate Izuku too. Perhaps he will know why Katsuki mentioned him. Do you know where he lives? I'm calling Nedzu. After 2 hours, Izuku made the decision to sketch a little and thought about redesigning his costume to accommodate most types of quirks because he might want to prevent it from being destroyed repeatedly in the future. However, Sensei called him. Izuku Midoriya, yes. I was wondering if you were still sleeping. It's 2 p.m. Oh, my mistake, I was checking the EU clock. Or perhaps it's the never mind. I think I found an alternative if you do not get your offer. Wait, how are you even aware about this? You never read the program of your school nor the journals. It doesn't matter, do you have 5 minutes? You should probably take a pen and a book too. Oh, and avoid tackling about this to your mother, I don't want to scare her. Does it mean it is illegal? It is, highly indeed, but I'm sure you are interested anyway. No, Izuku thought All for One would continue to try to persuade him. Alright, fine, go on. Excellent, you do know who is Sir Night-Eye, right? Yes, he used to be All Might's former sidekick. Izuku was going too far with the topic, saying, never mind, I have heard that a lot of things are happening in his sector. A Yakuza clan is back in business and they are developing some sort of drug. I have my sources, Izuku, and I think they are using someone to make it, or rather their quirk. Izuku's breathing rhythm had changed, and All for One could feel it. At this point, it didn't make sense. Why would Sensei tell him this? Izuku checked his phone to make sure it was All for One calling. Unless, you are interested by this person's quirk, right? How did you come to this conclusion? I'm probably the person you trust the most. When you want something you are ready to do anything to get it, especially when it comes to a quirk, so you are interested by this quirk. I do not know why, but it sounds really important, and also. I'm not asking you anything, I just suggested that this area was very active and that perhaps you might witness a lot of fights as you like to. Sensei, why do you need that quirk? Izuku's bedroom door opened simultaneously. Inko and Izuku nodded. Sweetheart, there are people at the door, they are from the police, it's about Katsuki. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to. Izuku sighed as Sensei hung up, saying, I heard, forget about this if you're not interested. The police were now there to question Bakugo. Maybe Mitsuki had told them they were best friends, or something. Foolish idiot. Izuku left his room and went to the kitchen, where he saw his mother presenting 2 men with coffins. One of them was someone he knew from the USJ, and the other man Wasa. Izuku froze. He said, putting his palms to his lips. Are you all right? Is something wrong? The detective eventually inquired after the others had been staring at him. Sorry, dust probably. I remember we met after the USJ even if it was short, Izuku said, putting down his hands. He accepted a cup of coffee and said, yes, we did. This is Toshinori Yagi, a representative from UA. I'm Detective Naomasa. Are you aware about what happened to Katsuki last night? Asked All Might in the lead. Izuku experienced the same thing. The detective oddities kept triggering like a seismograph. Why yes, Ochako Uraraka, one of my classmates told me. The officer said, we need to ask you a few questions. We talked to Katsuki earlier this morning and he said you attacked him yesterday, and that makes you a suspect, no offense.
I will continue the story in next part. Till then, bye bye.